Prime Minister prepares to chair Cabinet as he faces an ethics investigation into his wife's financial interests.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 18th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, the Parliamentary Ethics Watchdog has launched an investigation into Rishi Sunak over whether he should have informed MPs about his wife's links to a childcare company, given a boost in the budget. The Prime Minister maintains he declared the interest privately and correctly.
Criminals who buy and sell machetes, or so-called zombie knives, could face longer jail sentences as the government moves to crack down on the blades. We'll be speaking to the Policing Minister, Chris Philp, at 6:45.
The government may sanction all those involved in the trial of anti-Putin activist Vladimir Kara-Murza. The Russian-British dual national was sentenced yesterday to 25 years for criticising the war in Ukraine.
And the World Snooker Championship was disrupted last night after a Just Stop Oil protester poured orange powder onto one of the tables. The display forced a 24-hour suspension of the match between Robert Milkins and Joe Perry.
So what has the World Snooker Championship got to do with Just Stop Oil?
Probably not a lot, but you know, the visuals are amazing and
disgusting.
They've caught people's attention, and that's obviously the ambition of any protester, I suppose.
So that makes it okay?
No, I'm just saying, wonder what they were thinking, what to target, but you're absolutely right. What's snooker got to do with Just Stop Oil?
Well, I don't know. If I was in that arena and I hosted World Snooker for, 5 years, and I just absolutely would have suspected, is this radioactive?
Yeah, it looks
is this
dodgy.
a gas? Is this something awful? And I think it boils down to the fact we're too lenient on a lot of these protesters. A lot of people may agree with their aims and their ambitions, but their ways of doing things. That orange powder, I think, is very scary. I honestly think, is this radioactive? What's going to happen?
You know, it shows how easy it is to do these awful things if you do have worse intentions. So, yeah, I can see that it's alarming as well. Let us know your views. Get in touch the usual way. You can email or tweet us. And don't forget, let us know where you're watching or listening from.
OK, so Rishi Sunak will chair Cabinet this morning as the Parliamentary Ethics Watchdog launches an investigation into his family's financial ties.
So, has the Prime Minister done anything wrong? He's facing accusations that he failed to disclose that his wife holds shares in a childcare agency that's due to receive incentive payments as a result of the latest budget.
So when questioned by the Liaison Committee, Mr Sunak said he had declared his interests through legitimate channels.
Can you explain why the government's chosen to give a £600 bonus if you sign up as an individual, as a childminder, but if you go through one of the 6 private childcare agencies, that you get a £1,200 bonus, a double bonus?
I'll happily write back to you and the committee on exactly what conversations I had and the rationale for that.
The rationale, the use of taxpayers' money to give double bonuses to sign up with private agencies.
Well, I think it's a reflection of
system.
the fact that they're through intermediaries, so there are additional costs, and ultimately we just want to make sure the policy is effective in bringing additional people into the system, because I think...
And there's nothing the Prime Minister wishes to declare in respect of that?
No, I mean, all my disclosures are declared in the normal way.
Let's debate this in the studio now, joined by political reporter Stefan Boscher here in the studio. Stefan, she holds 20,000 ordinary shares and 7,100 Series A ordinary shares in the company. No one has come up with how much these are worth or how much she stands to gain, if at all.
Well, that's right. It's a private company. It's not a public company, so there aren't public records of how much money she's, due to gain. I think that the key thing is here that, firstly, it's a government policy that will directly affect the childcare sector. There will be thousands of pounds of grants which may go to the company that Akshata Murthy, the Prime Minister's wife, has shares in. And basically, the key thing is, while he did tell the Cabinet Office about this, he did tell him about this interest, he didn't tell MPs when asked about it directly. So it is a bit of a sort of ticky-tack point, but there is clearly a case to be heard. And I think the second point to note is the fact that, it's his wife again. We've seen this before, that her her financial dealings and her financial status has been a problem for the Prime Minister and has created stories around, his own propriety or impropriety. So I think it's another thing he doesn't need right now.
And I think this is somebody who stood on the steps of Downing Street, setting the highest possible standards, didn't he? And determined to set out professionalism from the very start. And yet, this is the guy who was fined in Partygate. He didn't wear a seatbelt. He didn't have his dog on a lead recently. And now he seems not to have followed the proper process with declaring his wife's interests. So is this, sort of like disregard, sort of arrogance for the rules almost?
I don't necessarily, subscribe to the fact that it's arrogant. What I think it is, this is a very wealthy family. They're worth almost £1 billion. They have a very complex web of financial arrangements, as people, who are this high worth generally do. And I think that for him, I think that he really wants to keep his family out of it, but he does it to the extent that he becomes complacent about these things, and they maybe don't, cross off all the I's and all the T's that need to be done. I think that ultimately, sometimes that he's not necessarily the most politically savvy operator, and he doesn't see these things coming. So, I think it'll be interesting to see how the investigation goes. It doesn't seem like it'd be a very large amount that she would financially benefit from, because we're talking about thousands of pounds here, not, £1 million contracts.
And complacent, not arrogant. Do you think that will be the view of Cabinet this morning when they meet with him?
Yeah, look, I think that actually they won't be too disappointed, because the fact that if we look at all the newspapers today, it's not really being splashed, it's not being made into a large thing. For a cabinet that has gone through the last 12 months of Boris Johnson and Liz Truss scandals, I think that they won't be too, fazed by it.
And I suppose, to be fair, if you set yourself the highest standards, it's easier to to slip, according to them. They also want to talk about machetes today. The government are clamping down on these. I suppose the question is, why has it taken so long to do this?
Right. I mean, I'm quite shocked that these things aren't already in the statute book.
Yeah.
I mean, we've learnt today that things like machetes and these great big whacking, zombie knives are legal, and I've been told that they're, available as easy as cheap as £8 online, and kids are able to access them. So the government's talking about having 2-year sentences for these sort of knives, up from 6 months. And them also being, largely banned, except for very, rare examples. So I think that this is something that will be quite a bipartisan policy, and shows that the government is trying to come up with ways to reform the justice system and the criminal system to reduce crime.
Yeah, you just got to look and you see these things in action here. And you can order them apparently incredibly easily. They can be delivered to your door, same-day delivery, and that sort of thing. Why on earth are they for sale? Why are they even allowed to be made and sold? And there is them being used and put into action there. But let us know your views on all of that. We'd appreciate knowing. Yeah. Let's say goodbye to you, Stefan, and we'll see you again later on in the programme. Thank you very much indeed. The government's considering sanctioning every individual involved in the trial of anti-Putin political activist Vladimir Kara-Murza.
Yes, the Russian-British dual national was sentenced yesterday to 25 years for criticising the war in Ukraine.
Now, this comes as opposition figure Alexei Navalny remains seriously ill in prison, with aides saying his condition is worsening. Well,
joining us now is the Russian opposition politician and ally of Alexei Navalny, Vladimir Asherkov. Good morning to you. Terribly sorry to hear about the state of your colleague and friend, Alexei Navalny, and we will talk about him in just a moment. But I do want to start with the huge news yesterday about Vladimir Kara-Murza, a British citizen, went to Cambridge, who's been given this terrible sentence, unprecedented sentence, just for speaking out against Putin's actions in Ukraine. 25 years.
Indeed, it is unprecedented sentence for politically motivated verdict in Russia. And Mr. Kara-Murza is both a Russian citizen and British citizen. And as you said, the British government considering sanctioning everybody involved in his persecution is morally and politically the right step.
He also suffers with some disabilities, I believe. How do you think he's going to be treated in prison? I mean, there must be serious concerns, not least given the way Navalny's been suffering in prison for some time now.
It's important to note that these disabilities are largely the result of two poisoning that he suffered in 2015, in 2017, similar to poisonings of Alexei Navalny, although of probably less grave nature. His health, Vladimir's health, has taken a turn for the worse since he was incarcerated a little over a year ago. We just pray for his health and well-being. We've seen footage from his sentencing yesterday. He seems to be in good moral spirits, but of course, Russian prison is not a walk in the park, and it's quite harsh conditions for him as well as for Alexei Navalny.
Yeah, and as you'd expect, widespread Western criticism and condemnation of that sentencing, but particular interest from us here in the UK because of his British citizenship. And the Foreign Office Minister, Andrew Mitchell, yesterday saying that they were looking into sanctioning every single person involved in that trial. And indeed, the Russian ambassador here in London was summoned to the Foreign Office. Is that likely to make any difference, do you think?
We don't know. I think British government has to act in accordance with its values, and sanctioning people who are involved in unlawful persecution of a British citizen and in human rights abuse is just makes sense.
And just lastly, before we let you go, let us know, how's Alexei Navalny doing? I presume, you know, he's not in a good state, but I mean, how grave is his condition?
As an ambulance was summoned to the prison where he's held last weekend. He complained of stomach pain. He has lost some 8 kilos over the last few weeks. So it's not very good. Given history of his assassination by Novichok agent in 2020, we suspect possible foul play on behalf of Russian authorities. At the same time, we've seen some footage from him yesterday, and he made a powerful statement in support of Mr. Karamurza. So I think his moral spirits are quite high, but his health is really a matter of grave concern for everybody.
Well, goodness me, what an amazing thing to do when you've been poisoned to wish somebody else well. Really good to get your view, Vladimir Asherkov, on the situation in Russia, which seems to be, if anything, doubling down on anybody speaking out against the war in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you.
The time now 12 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening news-wise. And a 30-year-old man and a 52-year-old woman have been arrested on suspicion of criminal damage after a protest at the World Snooker Championship in Sheffield. Just Stop Oil protesters disrupted yesterday evening's play at the event, pouring orange powder onto one of the tables.
Energy suppliers may not install prepayment meters in the homes of people over 85 from now on. Ofgem's expected to announce that all suppliers across England, Scotland and Wales have signed up to a code of practice to protect vulnerable customers. Under new rules, technicians will wear body cameras and audio equipment and won't visit homes of those over 85 or with terminal illness.
The King and Queen consort have personally picked a recipe for the coronation quiche to mark the event. The recipe includes spinach, broad beans and tarragon. The quiche will be served at the big lunches during the coronation celebration. But will it match coronation chicken?
No, it won't.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's hard to beat. And I think quiches are quite divisive. I don't think everybody loves quiches.
The texture.
Yeah, I think there's something about the egg it sometimes makes the pastry go soggy. A soggy bottom. What could be worse?
Yeah. Whereas coronation chicken, it's very little.
Can't ever go wrong.
No,
yeah.
no.
Let us know your thoughts.
Twitter CEO Elon Musk has revealed he's aiming to develop a new artificial intelligence. And the reason he's doing this is that it will act as an alternative to the one Microsoft has, ChatGPT.
Now, he doesn't give interviews very often. He recently did one in which came off quite badly. It was considered, well, in the last few days, in fact, the last few hours, he's been speaking to Fox News. And the tech mogul says if society isn't careful, AI has the potential to destroy humanity. Take a listen to this.
We're going to start something which I know you could call truth GPT, or a maximum truth-seeking AI that tries to understand the nature of the universe. And I think this might be the best path to safety, in the sense that an AI that cares about understanding the universe it is unlikely to annihilate humans because we are an interesting part of the universe, hopefully. AI is perhaps more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard that probability, but it is non-trivial. It has the potential of civilizational destruction.
I mean, Tucker Carlson's face there says it all, because it's not trivial. In fact, it has the potential to harm civilization. I mean, it's unbelievable when Elon Musk speaks about this kind of thing. He knows so much more than we do about it. If he's concerned, we should all be concerned. Let's see if that's the view of the Science and Technology Director at the think tank Academy of Ideas, Rob Lyons. I mean, my jaw is on the floor hearing that.
Well, he did say that the risk is very small. He just said it's non-trivial. So I don't think that we should be too worried about it. But the thing about artificial intelligence is it's really, really good at doing whatever you tell it to do. And if you just let it run off and do whatever it wants to do, then it can do some pretty dumb things by the standards of humans. So, for example, if you had an artificial intelligence that was running the buses, and you told that AI, the one thing you mustn't do is let the buses run late, then the AI might do something stupid like not pick up any passengers to ensure that they wouldn't be late. It's doing exactly what we tell it to do. So it's important that we keep an eye on what we're asking it to do and how well it's doing it, and we don't sort of let it run off and do something daft. You can see it with even with non-AI, like automated stock trading, that can cause real swings in the stock market because all the automated stock traders do exactly the same thing at the same time, sort of thing. So we just have to keep an eye on things. But I think it's more that much lesser but really stupid things could potentially happen if we don't have enough sense of what artificial intelligence is good at and what it's really bad at.
Yeah, and of course, when you hear him saying he actually thinks there should be a pause for 6 months in all development of AI whilst we all just take stock.
Are you scared by all of this, Rob?
No, not particularly. I think actually when you look at, there's a lot of tech bros saying, this is amazing what artificial intelligence can do. So you look at ChatGPT. What ChatGPT is good at is whizzing around the internet, scooping up information and regurgitating it in a form that looks like a human wrote it. But it also makes mistakes. And actually, people have complained about things, for example, like ChatGPT just making stuff up because it doesn't care about the truth. So that's the interesting what he was saying about a truth AI that will actually care about the truth in some way, shape, or form. How that works, I have no idea. There might be a commercial side to this as well. Let's face it, Elon Musk has sort of got squeezed out of the stuff that he's already involved in. He thinks that AI's got a lot of potential, so he's starting his own. So
exactly. So the cynic in me says that, he's spotted an opportunity here to paint himself as the saviour of humanity, coming up with truth GPT is perfect marketing, as you said.
Well, I'm reading in the Times here today, the head of Google. What keeps him up at night? What keeps him up at night, Rob, is the pace of change in AI and the lack of regulations on it. The fact that he and the industry don't fully understand how AI chatbots really work. Shouldn't that be a cause of concern for all of us?
Well, of course, I think that's important. And in fact, that's what's really important about the human element of these things. Artificial intelligence systems are tools, and they can be used well and they can be used badly. They have their limitations, as people have been pointing out. We need to keep an eye on them. We need to make sure they're not, just like, I don't know, we'll just hook up the artificial intelligence to some nuclear weapons and then walk away and see what happens. Obviously, we don't want to do that. Some sensible regulation, I'm sure, will be useful at some point once we start to get to grips with what these systems can and cannot do. And they are developing quite rapidly. But I think the civilizational destruction kind of arguments really depend on us doing some very, very, very stupid things with AI. And don't see that happening. I think people have enough common sense not to do that.
Well, it's interesting. He wants to train his version of Truth GPT to appreciate the beauty of the universe in the hope that that might stop civilization being destroyed. It all sounds a bit apocalyptic, but when the experts are saying it, we've got to take notice. Look, good to get your thoughts. Rob Lyons, Science and Technology Director at the Academy of Ideas. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you very much indeed. We're doomed. We're doomed. We're all doomed.
No.
By this, I mean, look, front of the Guardian there, show that picture there. That's AI generated, and that was submitted in a competition. It won the competition, but basically, the guy who originated it said that, you know, pictures like that should not be allowed to compete with real pictures, and the trouble is science can't tell the difference.
Well, yeah, there was the tiger yesterday. Could you tell the difference between the AI one and the photographed one? It was just perfect.
Yeah. But anyway, we're all going to be killed. We're all going to be wiped out by computers and robots. I've seen the films. With all of that. Stay with us and we will discuss the rise of influencers in prison, right? So what are they doing?
They're making content on smuggled phones.
How do they get away with that? We'll tell you after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very nice to see you again. 23 minutes past 6 on this Tuesday morning.
Still to come on the programme at 6:45, we're speaking to Policing Minister Chris Philp about plans to ban machetes from UK streets.
20 past 7 after a mum made headlines for calling her child avocado, or is it avocado? But anyway, it's avocado spelt avocado. We're going to talk about whether giving your baby a strange name is cruel or if it does help them stand out in the crowd.
I just can't imagine Prime Minister Avocado at the dispatch box. I mean, you're kind of limiting their opportunities, aren't you?
What is the strangest names that we know of? And I think whatever you name a child, it becomes it. Not that it should become an avocado, but that you just sort of take it. Eventually, everybody gets used to it.
Celebrities do it a lot, don't they? We had Apple and that was Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin's baby, and then you had Kardashians calling their firstborn North. Never heard of anyone being called North before. You get used to it. Maybe we just all need to be a bit more adventurous. That being said, my son's called William, so
what name is?
Can't get more classic.
Yeah, what name isn't strange? My name's strange. You know, you don't know too many Eamons in the
Are there not lots in Northern Ireland?
There's lots in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, yes. But It's an Arab name.
Is it?
It's an Arab
I
name.
thought it was an
well,
Irish
it's
name.
No, it is. It is an Irish name, but it's also an Arab name. Eamonn. I just when you reach me, just go amen, amen, like a prayer. I once did a show in America, and when I come out on stage, they said, amen, amen.
That's how you should be greeted everywhere.
Everywhere.
You'd like
Amen,
that.
amen.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Yeah, that's that. So I thought that was good. So that was quite good. But anyway, strange, weird names. Let us know, gbviews at gbnews.uk or tweet at gbnews.
I have a feeling this next story is going to wind everybody up because prisoners who should be paying their debt to society are becoming social media sensations by uploading videos of themselves using drugs and other contraband. How can that be allowed?
Well, we'll find out now because inmates across the country are racking up millions of views, showing the often lawless situations behind bars with the videos uploaded on not only phones, but smuggled phones. I always have an issue when you think, how were they smuggled? You say to yourself,
oh, well, let's not go there.
Touching this phone,
well,
but how did they get it into prison?
Yes,
did they drop it with a drone?
Sometimes.
Or was it concealed?
Well, I know who will know more about all of this. The former prison governor, Vanessa Frakes, joins us this morning. Vanessa, we always love speaking to you on the programme. Thanks for joining us. Look, this is outrageous. I mean, these people are criminals. They have been sentenced to time behind bars.
No, we haven't seen any. We haven't seen any of the videos.
You want to have a look?
Have we got? Yes, let's. I think we should have, Vanessa, before we all start talking about this, is see one of these videos first of all, and then we can all judge. Okay, here we go. So what? Well,
right. So what we got here is your TikTok video. Oh my goodness. And people messing around. Oh, that looks like contraband drugs there, bit of cocaine or something. And they're making money from this. They are dancing around in your classic kind of TikTok way, in case you're listening on the radio, I'm trying to paint this picture. Yeah, they're sort of acting out. Oh yeah, they put sort of hoodies over their heads and rapping. Anyway, not the sort of behaviour you would expect, Vanessa, to see from prison officers.
Prison officers, I think. You mean prisoners.
Forgive me. Yeah.
No, it's not, you know, it's very disheartening to see. Unfortunately, you know, mobile phones get into jails, and you know, it's. You can't say one way that they get in because they get in many ways. You know, illicit articles come over the wall. They come in via visits. They come in via the courts. They come in via staff. You know, it's a constant battle for any prison to try and stop them coming in. You know, technology has moved forward, and unfortunately, the prisons haven't quite caught up yet. You know, you might say, well, why don't we put mobile phone blockers in prisons?
Yes.
Well, you know, mobile phone, that's a good idea. But, you know, these kind of technologies, you know, with a prison, it's not one size fits all. There's many different prisons, over 170 of them. Some are big, some are small, some are top security, some are open. You know, some are in the middle of towns, London, Manchester, Birmingham, you know. So you put a mobile phone blocker in, they're very difficult to pinpoint access. So people living in surrounding the prison may be affected, businesses might be affected. Right. So it's very difficult for prisons, you know, and also if you're just blocking the mobile phones, you're losing a lot of intelligence because, yes, you might see these idiots with their phones and on TikTok, but you can bet your bottom dollar that there are 3 or 4 there. There's probably been found 20, 30, 40 phones that prisons gather intelligence off and pass that intelligence on. So much better than a blocker would be sort of like a Wi-Fi interceptor where it captures the signals from phones. But of course, all these things cost money, and you know we're all aware of our public sectors, and you know they need investment, and I think that's that is part of it.
But Vanessa, would there be a punishment? I mean, once this is seen online and the prisoner's identified, would there be a punishment for using a phone in such a way?
Oh, you can bet your bottom dollar. You know, having a mobile phone in prison is illegal and carries a 2-year sentence. Personally thinking, I don't think it's enough of a deterrent. But you can bet that if these people have been identified, they'll be down the segregation unit quicker than you can say mobile phone. You know, they'll be searched, they'll be shifted to different parts of the country. But yes, absolutely. You know, the unfortunate thing is that sometimes the police and the courts don't think, you know, it's much of a problem. So often they'll get a 2-year sentence concurrent with what they're currently serving, which, you know, if they're serving 5 years and you put 2 years concurrent, it's nothing.
Yeah, but Vanessa, where are the guards in all of this? Where are the prison officers? Where's the authorities? They're all larking about. You can see they're, apart from anything, having fun, which, to be honest, offends me a little bit.
To have some free time.
Well, really? I don't know. Why should they be larking about in prison? What, is that normal?
Isabel, you want them chained to a...
I don't know. It seems obvious to me they're
up grinding corn or something.
Clearly not, but I think throwing yourself down the stairs is quite obviously inappropriate behaviour.
I don't disagree with you, but you have to remember, when I first joined the prison service 30-odd years ago, it was a senior officer and 6 staff to look after 90 prisoners. Now that has dropped to 2 staff, sometimes 1 member of staff. So you can't be everywhere at the same time. And I think, you know, people have to realise that the prison staff do their very best in very difficult circumstances.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case.
Vanessa, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Vanessa Frakes is a retired prison governor and author. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Always good to talk to Vanessa.
What offends you so much that a man takes a chair and bumps down the stairs?
Well, do you know what offends me is they've probably done something awful to somebody. And I just imagine how they would feel seeing someone larking around. I don't know what I'm imagining, but I thought it would just be a bit more sombre and serious in jail. I don't know. I just think chucking yourself down the stairs, you know, in a kind of way as if you were a naughty kid at school, it's just not for me. I don't know. I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect to see that.
They should be manacled and whipped.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm quite clearly not saying that. But I do think if that person has robbed a granny at knife point...
But they're allowed some time off to watch Coronation Street.
Yes, but that's not sitting around watching Coronation Street, is it? It's chucking themselves down the stairs.
Well, it's like one of your children would do exactly the same.
Yes, but they haven't committed a crime.
Well, that's a whole other story. That's a whole other story. 33 minutes past 6 or 27 minutes to 7, whatever way you want to look at it. Coming up, the country's economy could be showing signs of recovery or not. We'll discuss that in the rest of today's News in the Papers with Emily Carver and Sean McDonald.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on
Absolutely.
Dubes & Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Let's bring you up to date with this morning's front pages of the newspapers. Times, first of all, the Prime Minister's to be investigated by an ethics watchdog over claims he should have informed MPs about his wife's shares in a childcare agency. Now, we're also going to be talking about that picture that you see there, which is this protester at the World Snooker Championship in Sheffield. He's a Just Stop Oil protester there, and he threw orange dye on one of the tables. Quite a scary situation. Our newspaper reviewers talking about that next.
The Express leads with signs. Britain's economy showing signs of a quicker recovery than was thought possible.
Guardian, energy suppliers have agreed to ban forcibly installed prepayment meters.
And the Mail is focusing on the emergency smartphone alarm that's being tested on Sunday. They say it could terrify the whole country. To be fair, they're quoting experts who are warning that.
Yeah, but they are trying to terrify the whole country. Or there's something that we have to be terrified about that they're not telling us about. There you are. That's Jessie from Little Mix there. And she's saying, Jessie Nelson, and she says that she hasn't spoken to her bandmates, or they haven't spoken to her, more importantly, since she left the group 3 years ago. Joining us to go through the newspapers in more detail is GB News presenter and columnist at Conservative Home, Emily Carver, as well as the broadcaster and host of podcast Blethered, Sean MacDonald. Should we explain, Sean, what blethered means to... Because Isabel won't know what blethered means.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean blethered. I know what blethered means.
You'll know, having a very similar language to us in Scotland.
Yes.
Blether is a colloquial term, a Scottish colloquial term, which means to chat. So I suppose it is a past tense.
Blethering.
Blethering, aye, having a wee chat.
I thought it was like a play on being leathered, like being drunk.
There you go. See, we're being typecast, by the way.
That was my first thought.
That's anti-Scottish racism. I won't stand for
come
it.
on.
Yeah. So, anyway, blether on a bit about this protest, this Just Stop Oil protester here in Sheffield. You know, I don't know if you've ever been, Sean, but I've been a number of years. It's a very intimate auditorium that you're in there. It's split in two at this stage of the tournament. There's a screen and there's two matches going on. And it's almost like a church. It's very quiet. It's very peaceful. And then this Egypt comes out and does what he does. What's your take?
Yeah, I think I've got a mix of views. First of all, I'll say it is a concern that somebody's able to break in and so easily get onto the snooker table. Seeing the image, is completely surreal. Questions have to be asked. How did he manage to get to this point? I saw you saying that there's a serious concern that it could have been something really dangerous. It could have been
If I sat in that audience, I would have thought this is contagious. Whatever he has here, could be radioactive. This could give you chest problems. Goodness knows what on earth. I mean, I still don't know what it was.
This one's a bit of a double-edged sword, because if what they're trying to achieve is to be on the front page of the papers and have everybody talking about it, we're sitting here. However, I think it can have the opposite effect, because people... And I know that sounds like such a contradiction in terms, but it can have the opposite effect and people switch off to you. Protest is obviously meant to be disruptive. That is what they're trying to do. But if you're, I mean,
but snooker's going to say, what has it got to do with us?
Well, I think they'll be saying it's across the board. It's something that impacts everybody in every facet of society.
Including snooker players.
Yeah.
But this particular guy, he's very radicalised. I mean,
clearly. But he came on this channel, I think, only a couple of weeks ago saying, he's already decided he's never going to have children because of the climate. Yeah. He doesn't know for sure whether there'll be a planet for them to live and grow up in. So it's hardly surprising that he's willing to go to these lengths if he genuinely seems to think that the world is going to end unless people like him do something.
Well, sport is now being targeted. We had the National on Saturday and the World Snooker Championship as well. So is sport a fair target for these sort of things?
Well, it gets the attention of the papers, clearly. I mean, this is an extraordinary picture on the front of the Telegraph. Sport is something hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. I don't know how many people tune into the World Snooker Championships. Must be huge numbers. Millions and millions of people will see this. Most people will think he's an idiot.
But what I see is a man who's deranged. I mean, not that picture.
He is deranged,
it's the picture in the front of the Telegraph we're looking at. And he's howling like a wolf there on front of that. If it was in America, he'd probably be dead. He'd have got a bullet through the head.
Well, thank goodness we don't do that, because I don't believe he deserves to be shot for this. But he should. It's so sad, actually, because this young chap, he's going to have a criminal record. He's not going to be able to get a job. But he has such a nihilistic way of looking at the world that he doesn't care. He'll do anything for this cause and ruin his own life.
Would you get a criminal record for that? Would you get a criminal record because it is a private event, isn't it?
Good question. Don't know.
I don't think it'd be a private event. It's a public event, isn't it? They sell tickets for it.
No, I know it's public, but it's privately organised. It's not like it's a sort of something that just anybody can go to. You need to have a ticket. It's kind of like if I stormed the stage at a Little Mix concert, it may be frowned upon, but would I get a criminal record? It's a murky one. I don't know,
because I think this one's vandalism as well, probably.
Yeah. If you ran on a football pitch, I think you would have a criminal charge. So
maybe get a criminal record. Let us know your thoughts.
They will take that table. I mean, it's amazing to watch the people who construct the tables. I mean, they will take that out. That will be dumped, that table, and they'll have one set up overnight. It's just amazing to watch them in action. And men will be out with irons, and the green bays will be flattened and whatever.
Yeah, I think there's something a wee bit comically absurd about it, though. It's just not, I don't know, it's not somewhere I'd associate with that level of, I don't know, disruption or political expression.
Makes you think, where's
next? What's comically absurd, or is it fair, is Sunak's behaviour with his wife. Has he actually not done what he was supposed to do, or is this just sort of a little bit of what was the word that was used? It wasn't arrogance, it was complacency.
Oh, complacency. The Prime Minister of the UK, he seems to get away with complacency all the time. I don't know if you remember, but maybe a few weeks, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I sort of questioned the validity of a billionaire being Prime Minister, and you two, and I can't remember who else was on with us, disagreed, which is fair enough. But my point was, his interests are so far removed from the British public's, as we're seeing here. You know, best case scenario, he's forgotten how many investments he has across his portfolio as a billionaire, and it's now come back to bite him. The investigation, this was launched into the eye because it's been revealed that his wife is a shareholder in Koru Kids, and it's a childcare provider, one of 6, I think, that are standing to benefit directly from policies announced in last month's budget.
But how much would she stand again? The thing is, we don't know. We're all talking about this. She has some sort of investment in it. We don't know what the investment means. But bottom line is, how much could it be worth to her?
Probably not a lot. I mean, she's probably got hundreds, if not thousands, of investments, shares in all sorts of things. And of course, childcare was something that, was a very popular policy, right? People wanted more money to go into childcare, but clearly, he needs to be, sorting out sorting out his finances a little better in terms of notifying people.
Yeah, but what do you think about Sean's point that a billionaire is out of touch? I mean, certainly that will be what Labour will want to try and hone in on, and we see that a lot with the attacks, particularly on his wife, because it is, let's not forget, her wealth, really, that is extraordinary. But polling seems to show that actually people think the fact that he's incredibly wealthy and still doing this job actually means he's doing it for the right reasons. He's not trying to do this to make money. He's here because he cares about and actually, weirdly, the public seem to respect that.
Well, I think most people do. I mean, it's not as if he's the only rich man in the whole of Parliament. Of course, I think he's the only billionaire. But there are other rich people. I mean, Keir Starmer has a number of properties, for example. Differently. But Rishi Sunak, he's never denied it.
He's never tried to cover the fact that he's a very wealthy man. A lot of the money does come from his wife. I don't think she should be fair game, necessarily, when it comes to political point scoring. So I think most people would judge him on what he does. But I can understand why some people are uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, see, I don't think it's political point scoring. I think it's holding the Prime Minister and his wife accountable. The issue that I have here is he's failed to declare the interest to begin with, and he's now said that, you know, he's declared it and he's done that as it should have been done, but he's refusing to say when it was done, so that's only after he's been pulled up for it, which again, so I can't look at him and say, oh, well done you know, you've referred your interest to the Standards Committee, because it's only under duress that you've done that. So I think that then completely, it nullifies any sort of positive or any complimentary analysis you should have had.
I guess the question is whether he was hiding it on purpose. Yeah. I doubt it.
Yeah, but again, it's inconsequential whether it's on purpose or even how much he's earning, because he is the Prime Minister, and, you know, you shouldn't be getting away with this, I'm afraid. That's how I see it.
I'll reserve opinion until I see how much she stands to gain from it, really, I suppose. Sean, I want to go to the Times, page 4 on the Times. Gene protein, the key to technique for switching off male fertility. So this is an effort to create a contraceptive pill for men.
Yes, efforts to create a contraceptive pill for men have been given a boost by the discovery of a genetic switch that appears to control male fertility. Now, I'm not going to try and paint myself as some sort of, aren't I a radical feminist, but watch how quickly men now start to say, I don't know, maybe we should do a wee bit more research into this. We shouldn't be playing with people's biology. But very, very quick to allow women to do it. It's this gene called ARRDC5. It can produce a protein that is needed it can stop the production of a protein that is needed for sperm to develop the ability to swim properly. Interesting. We'll see how popular that is.
Now, very popular, and I want your opinion on it, because very shortly we'll be going to the Minister of State for Crime, Policing and Fire, Chris Philp. But machetes, and we were looking at this, and our production team yesterday went online to try and order a zombie machete and got it very easily, same-day delivery and whatever.
Same-day delivery.
Same-day delivery. Emily, I just sort of look and I think, why in the world do we need these machetes? I understand Second World War, Gurkhas hacking their way through the jungles and all that sort of thing, the fight against the Japanese. But why on earth? Why are these available?
Should I try and play devil's advocate here by asking, is there any use for a machete that could be legitimate?
Well, OK,
Cutting carrots.
Or, no, you could be going on a trek to one of those countries and you're packing before you go.
You could be.
How are you getting that through security?
You don't need a zombie version of it. It's all to do with these TV programmes and films. You know, these two-ended, these blades, and they all look really ghastly.
Should the over 18s be allowed to buy a machete?
OK. Well, let's get the opinion of the expert in all of this. The Minister of State for Crime, Chris Philp, joins us. Good morning to you. Listen, why on earth would anyone legitimately want a machete? And on that basis, why on earth have they been legal until now?
Well, this came to my attention shortly after I was appointed a few months ago, when members of Parliament came to me with constituency cases where these zombie knives with double serrated edges and in all kinds of strange shapes had been used to commit violent offences. And I couldn't see any reason at all why these need to be legal. And that's why today the Home Secretary and I are announcing this process to start to ban, essentially, those kind of knives. There is no legitimate use for double-edged machetes or zombie knives. And when they're used, they can cause extremely nasty injuries. If you talk to trauma doctors in accident and emergency, they will tell you that the injuries these knives inflict are much, because they've got double serrated edges or they've got jagged edges. They often inflict much more serious internal injuries than a normal knife. They're also used to intimidate people, whether it's used in muggings to get someone's watch or mobile phone, or in gang warfare. So the short answer is there's no reason at all for people to have these, and that is why we're looking to ban them.
So, to cut a long story short, will they still be able to be sold legally? Are they all going to be banned, or just some of them banned, or depending what your source is, banned?
Well, we're going to set out a definition. You've got to, obviously, for a law to be effective, you've got to define precisely what it is you're banning. So if you look at the consultation paper, it sets out the proposed definition, and it contains things like having two serrated edges, being over a certain length, having holes or strange shapes, all of these kind of things. It's set out quite clearly. And once those are banned, yes, what that means is the sale, the manufacture, the marketing, the importation, and the possession in private of all of those things are illegal. And of course, you mentioned a second ago before coming to me that you'd looked online, and through the online safety bill that's currently going through Parliament, we're going to be tightening up on the online sale of illegal goods, which will of course include, once these changes are made, these illegal machetes and zombie knives as well.
Let's talk about the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Downing Street have got to be kicking themselves about this, haven't they? He set out on the steps of Number 10 to hold his office and his team, and indeed himself, to the highest standards, and yet he has failed to follow proper scrutiny and declare his wife's interests. What a mistake.
Well, I think no one really doubts Rishi's integrity and ethics. He has declared, as he said to the committee, I think at the time, and in his subsequent letter on the 4th of April, that he has declared his wife's interests in his ministerial declaration. He did draw attention to that to the committee when he gave evidence, and he also wrote to them subsequently as well. And obviously he'll work with the Standards Commissioner to clear up any questions that are outstanding. But I don't think there's anything sinister here. He has made his ministerial declaration.
But is that good enough? I mean, sinister, maybe he isn't, but there seems to be a bit of a trend. First, it was the fine for attending a party during lockdown from the police. Then he didn't bother wearing a seatbelt when he put out a video of himself. More recently, a minor rule, but an important one. He got filmed, didn't he, in Hyde Park without a lead on his dog, right next to a sign which required a lead on his dog. And here we are again. Is it complacency?
No, I don't think so. And as I say, he has declared his interests as a minister in his cabinet office return, and he'll be working with the commissioner to clear up any outstanding questions. But I don't think there's anything sinister here. And the announcement he was talking about to get more money into childcare, to provide free childcare for children up, I think, to the age of 4, and get more people to train as childminders, I think those are policies that all of us, to be honest, can get behind.
Minister, I don't know last night if you were watching the snooker, or will you have seen news coverage of the World Championship from Sheffield and the Just Stop Oil protester. There was two of them. One of them was able to pour their orange powder over the snooker table, and this follows on the back of the protests at the Grand National on Saturday, with sport very much being targeted by various activists. How much of a concern is this to you, and do you plan to do anything about it?
Well, it is a concern because, where sporting events get disrupted, that is very serious for the athletes and the sports men and women who are competing, and it obviously disrupts the event for spectators as well. I think some of the horse trainers in the Grand National said they thought because the horses were kind of spooked by the delay, they thought it might even have contributed to one of the animals that sadly died. So I do take this very seriously. This shouldn't be happening. I hope those concerned get prosecuted. I think at Aintree, police made over 100 arrests. You asked what we're doing about it. The Public Order Bill has almost completed its passage through Parliament, and that gives the police enhanced powers to deal with disruptive protests. I and the public are sick of having their day-to-day lives disrupted by these protesters who are trying to deliberately ruin the lives of fellow citizens, whether it's blocking streets or whether it's disrupting sporting events. I don't think the public appreciate that at all. Of course, people have the right to peaceful protest, but that does not extend to the right to deliberately disrupt other people's day-to-day lives, getting to work, getting to hospital, nor does it extend to deliberately disrupting legitimate sporting events. So I'm glad the police made those arrests at Aintree last weekend.
Yeah, speaking of the right to protest, Vladimir Kara-Murza yesterday facing unprecedented sentencing in Russia for speaking out against Putin's crimes in Ukraine. Obviously, we have an interest in this as he's a British national. Foreign Office Minister Andrew Mitchell says there'll possibly be sanctions for all who were involved in that trial. Why possibly? What are the loopholes that we need, or the holes, the hoops that we have to jump through to get this sorted?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, this case of the dual nationalist, dual Russian UK citizen is absolutely shocking. It's another example of Putin's criminal regime persecuting those who speak out against what he is doing, his barbaric and illegal invasion of Ukraine, which is, of course, under investigation, I think, for war crimes, besides being in violation of every conceivable international law. So I don't want to speak for my Foreign Office colleagues. It's their area of policy, but I'm glad to hear that they're looking at this. And, I know other countries have imposed sanctions in these circumstances, and I'm very glad the United Kingdom government is actively looking at it, as well as Andrew Mitchell said yesterday.
OK. Chris Felt, Policing Minister, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, look, we'll go to the break. We'll be back with lots more after that. We'll have more on the ethics investigation into the Prime Minister as he prepares to chair Cabinet today. But first, let's find out the forecast. And I think it's going to be, by and large, not a bad week this week, a bit windy. But Alex Deakin with the Tuesday forecast.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Things brightening up for most places today. It's a bit drab in some spots first thing, but many of us will see some sunny spells. Warmest weather in the west, with an easterly wind picking up around this big area of high pressure. That's going to bring a coolish feel to some North Sea coasts, and it feels pretty fresh this morning under the cloud, but it is tending to break up and melt away, and most of us will be dry. And generally, it will turn sunnier through the day. Some of this low cloud is likely to cling to some of the North Sea coast into the afternoon, particularly on the east coast of Scotland. And later on, the cloud may increase once more across the southeast. This easterly breeze, as I say, will bring a fresh feel to much of East Anglia, east and North Yorkshire, especially along the coast, where temperatures are going to struggle to get much above 11 or 12 Celsius. But further west, we could again get into the mid-teens, and the Highlands of Scotland could again get close to 20 Celsius with lots of sunshine here. Through this evening, I think we'll see a bit more cloud developing across the south and the possibility of a few showers coming in, particularly into southwest England later in the night. But most of us will have a dry night. Still fairly breezy. That'll help to keep the temperatures up at 6 and 7 Celsius in many places. But some rural spots with the clearest spells in the west will turn a little colder, perhaps even a pocket or two of frost through some sheltered glens across western Scotland. But again, here, plenty of sunshine to come tomorrow. Same goes for Northern Ireland. England and Wales, a bit more cloud around, and still the possibility of a few showers in southwest England, perhaps even into South Wales, but very hit and miss. Most places will be dry. Good spells of sunshine, and again, that contrast with east and west, with these eastern coasts pretty chilly, 10 or 11 at best. For the west, 15, 16, should feel fairly pleasant. But that brisk easterly wind will continue for a few days yet. High pressure dominating further north, but weather fronts moving in will bring an increased chance of showery rain from Thursday onwards. Goodbye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Prime Minister prepares to chair Cabinet as he faces an ethics investigation into his wife's financial interests.
Hello there, very good morning. Good to see you. It's exactly 7 o'clock, Tuesday, 18th of April. Breakfast on GB News, on radio, online, on most places with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The parliamentary ethics watchdogs launched an investigation into whether Rishi Sunak should have declared his wife's links to a company given a boost in the budget. The PM maintains he declared the interest privately and correctly.
Criminals who buy and sell machetes or zombie knives could face longer jail sentences as the government moves to crack down on the blades.
The government may sanction all those involved in the trial of anti-Putin activist Vladimir Kara-Murza. The Russian-British dual national was sentenced yesterday to 25 years for criticising the war in Ukraine.
And the World Snooker Championship was disrupted last night after a Just Stop Oil protester poured orange powder onto one of the tables. A second protester tried to sabotage the second table but was prevented from doing so. The display forced a 24-hour suspension of the match between Robert Milkins and Joe Perry.
And lots of you have been having your say about that. Tony says there's always some form of security at sports events, but last time at the horse racing and now at the snooker, it seems security is just not good enough.
Well, high on earth.
You protect
Mate, you've obviously never been there. It's an arena, short of putting a wall of people between you and the play that was going on. What else can you do?
Well, they did introduce that at Wimbledon, didn't they? After, was it Monica Seles got stabbed? Sandra in Hertfordshire says they should not be let off with a small fine or a warning. And Kevin has got in touch to say players, staff and the audience have been exposed to a potentially dangerous situation by these idiots throwing the powder.
I think it's traumatising for not only people who are there, but for people watching in general. And the whole thing is, what is in that powder? You don't know at that particular time what they're protesting about or how they're contaminating.
Where are we supposed to have fun these days? Can't you just get away from politics sometimes?
Do you know, you're right. There's a word. There's a three-letter word that a lot of people have forgotten.
Fun.
Fun.
Yeah.
I read in the newspaper today that men don't date women for their sense of humour.
Really? Well, that's just as well. Not been known for being intentionally funny.
Is it true?
People laugh at me.
Is it true just women
I could
are
marry
not
a man
funny?
for being funny.
You could?
Yes.
But how many blokes look at a woman and say,
no, but that's
she's
where you've
so
gone
funny?
wrong.
Why?
Yeah, because it's not about looking, it's about the way they make you feel.
All right, they make the way you. That's a song, isn't it?
Yeah,
the way you make me feel.
Oh, God.
The way you make me feel.
Told you, don't make me
Really
sing on the
turn me
TV.
on. So, do men not pay their attention?
Newsflash, they're only interested in,
Is that right?
No, probably not. I don't think so. Hope not.
Or are women just not funny?
Possibly that. No, do you know what? No, women are funny. Do you know who's one of the funniest women I know? Sharon Horgan. She starred in Catastrophe. She's in the papers today. I follow her on Instagram. She cracks me up. There is a rise of female humour, and I do find it really tickles me. Look at the Bridesmaids movie. Brilliant.
Doesn't matter if it tickles you, if it's not tickling blokes.
Well, I don't like most of your humour, so there you go.
I don't profess to be funny.
I'm laughing.
I'm deadly serious on it. I don't try to be funny or witty or mischievous in any way.
But it is true. Can we have fun anywhere and escape
from politics and news.
When
Not
was
anymore.
the last time you had any fun?
The weekend. Yeah, I had fun
Would
at
you
the
care
weekend.
to share it with us?
Not right now.
Right, that's what we're doing. We want to hear from you. There's how you do it.
So our top story this morning, Rishi Sunak is to chair Cabinet as he does every Tuesday, but this time he'll have to face them in the wake of parliamentary ethics watchdog launching an investigation into his family's financial ties.
Well, he's facing accusations that he failed to disclose that his wife holds shares in a childcare agency and it would receive incentive payments as a result of the last budget.
Well, earlier we spoke to the Policing Minister, Chris Philp, who told us there's nothing wrong with the Prime Minister's actions.
Well, I think no one really doubts Rishi's integrity and ethics. He has declared, as he said, to the committee, I think at the time, and in his subsequent letter on the 4th of April, that he has declared his wife's interests in his ministerial declaration. He did draw attention to that to the committee when he gave evidence, and he also wrote to them subsequently as well. And obviously he'll work with the Standards Commissioner to clear up any questions that are outstanding. But I don't think there's anything sinister here. He has made his ministerial declaration.
Let's now go to our guest this morning, political reporter Stefan Boscher. I didn't get that right.
Boscher, close enough. Close
Is
enough.
that Italian?
It is.
It is, very
Well
good.
done,
Boscher,
well done.
Stefan. Right, so much to go through here. First of all, the Sunak business. I'm not getting my knickers in a twist about this until I know how much his wife stands to gain, if at all.
Well, that's just right. I mean, we know that she has shares in a childcare company, and at the last budget, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt announced that childcare companies will benefit from grants worth, thousands of pounds. We're not talking about £1 million contract here. And I think that it's something that Rishi Sunak has declared to the Cabinet Office, but he's been pulled up because when asked about it in a parliamentary committee, he didn't mention it. He didn't say that he had a financial interest there. So it does seem that it is something relatively minor maybe, and there may not be a very large financial gain for the family, but it's still not the best look, and it may still add to the view that some people have that he's an out-of-touch billionaire.
Yeah,
he's a fortune he's a hostage to fortune, isn't he, about this whole thing, because he talks about sleaze and how he's going to remove it from public life. But when you look at the amounts involved, you say £1 million contract, whatever, until I know what her share of that would be, if at all, that is the question. But is anybody seriously trying to say that the Prime Minister let policy go through the budget, he rubber-stamped it on the basis that his wife's going to make 1,500 quid or something?
Well, that's just right. I think it'd be specious to say that it's, pure corruption. I mean, they're people who are worth almost $1 billion. They're not going to be too worried about a few grand extra to a childcare company they have investment in. Probably something that they don't even think about too much, this investment. The amount of money they have tied up in other instruments is so vast. It probably is just an oversight, but it's still, it's still not a great look.
He declared it as a ministerial interest,
He just didn't declare it in the Commons, and obviously there's a grey area because actually it's his wife's finances, not his. But I do think when you stand outside Number 10 and you promise to have the highest standards, you have to uphold them. And this is not the first time that he's had perhaps unintentional slip-ups, which make it, frankly, if at best embarrassing, at worst, well, probably a bit complacent, and maybe at worst arrogant.
Yeah, I think that he has, a blind spot when it comes to his family and his wife. We saw last year that it came out that she had non-dom status and wasn't paying a full tax bill in the UK, despite Rishi Sunak at that time being Chancellor, controlling the country's economy. We also saw at one point that it turned out he had a green card, Rishi Sunak. So he has, some of these slips in him, and I think that he needs to get this sorted out, especially because he can't put a foot wrong between now and the next election if he has any chance of winning.
Can we look at the Northern Irish situation? He was over in Belfast last week when President Biden was there. There's a big conference which has been held this week at Queen's University in Belfast, and the Clintons are the star of the show there. Tony Blair's there as well. George Mitchell, who was the negotiator who was there for all the talks during the ceasefires 25 years ago. What's going on there today, or how is that being perceived?
Yeah, so yesterday was very much a sort of case of remember when. You had, all these old figures who brokered the peace in Northern Ireland talking about how that was done. And today you have current government ministers like Chris Heaton-Harris, the Northern Ireland Secretary, and also the Irish Foreign Minister, Michael Martin. And they're mostly going to be talking about, I think, how they can get the Northern Ireland Assembly, the power sharing arrangements back into, a place where it's functional. The DUP hasn't been sitting in Stormont for about a year and a half now. And this is a serious concern to people in Northern Ireland, considering that these, institutions were created by this peace agreement. And I think that it's in the interest of everyone that, they get back together.
Stefan, sorry, go on.
No, I know what you're going to do, but just hold on a second. Is there any chance that a talking shop like this could put pressure on the DUP to come back and reinstate government in Northern Ireland?
Quite potentially. I mean, we've seen so far they've been really intransigent. They've been quite hard-headed about it. Nothing has really brought them back to the table, including the Windsor Framework recently signed by Rishi Sunak, which aims to fix some of the trading problems caused by Brexit. I think that, it's probably going to have to be public pressure, right? And it's going to have to be people really clamouring, especially unionists in Northern Ireland, clamouring for this to be resolved.
Stefan, good talking to you. Thank you very much.
Actually, I'm going to put you on the spot, Stefan, because we have some breaking news from the Office for National Statistics relating to unemployment figures, and I just want to get your reaction to that. They've risen to 3.8% in the 3 months to February. Previously, it was 3.7%, and it had remained the same. But the big story here, really, is that once again, the long-term sick, those who are deemed economically inactive, has actually risen to a record new high. And this is something the government specifically are trying to tackle, isn't it, Stefan?
Especially embarrassing when we haven't got enough people to fill a lot of these jobs as well. As to, are the jobs there? Is the workforce there? Why are people not filling them?
It's a serious problem. Post-COVID, a lot of people over 50 have decided to either retire because they have a big saving pot, and other people are just, quite unwell post-COVID and aren't able to work. And it's a huge drain on the economy. We have a stagnant GDP level we've seen in the last month. We have a country that's very unproductive economically, and we need these people back to work. I mean, one thing I will say on the unemployment figure, though, is it's actually, I think the government will see that as a win, because the OBR at the start of the year was predicting it hit 6.8% or something like that. So in that sense, it's good, but the economically inactive question
is a big problem.
It's a big problem.
Yeah. All right, Stefan, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much indeed. I want to go to Sheffield now, the World Snooker Championship. This is a breaking story last night. A Just Stop Oil protester, he jumped on the table. He opened a bag of orange powder. No one had any idea what was in that bag, but those are the hectic scenes there. Causing the match to be abandoned. As a matter of fact, 2 protesters jumped on tables. He was the only one that got a chance to open his orange bag. A man who was there, the Associate Sports Features Editor for The Sun, Rob Maul. Rob, I was just making a point there. That must have been very disturbing, whether you were a player or whether you were a spectator watching at home or indeed in the auditorium.
I mean, Stephen Hendry, the 7-time world snooker champion, said it was quite scary. And Mark Allen, who we spoke to after the match, who was playing on table 2, said it was quite daunting, quite terrifying almost, because it came out of the blue. We've never seen these scenes before in the confines of snooker. It's quite a sedate sport, really. Unprecedented here at the Crucible for the last 45 years. To recap, as we can see on your screen, one Just Oil protester jumped on the table. They'd paid for front row seats, released this orange powder during the first frame of Robert Milkins and Joe Perry, and a woman in a coordinated attack tried to do it on table 2. But as you can see, the referee, Olivia Martial, who's actually a nurse who takes sort of unpaid leave to come to the snooker, reacted quickly and managed to stop her and security. If she had got on the table last night and released some sort of powder, then the snooker would have been finished for the evening. As it happened, they had to suspend play on table 1, and they've reclothed it overnight. And Milkins and Perry, whose preparations for this World Championships are completely ruined now, will have to come back this evening to start their first session.
Rob, you'll remember when Monica Seles was stabbed at Wimbledon, I don't know, 30 years ago, something like that, but it changed the way that the crowd could get as close to the players when they were having their breaks. Do you think that this is going to spark a rethink when it comes to snooker, maybe just the Crucible, in how they keep the audience away from the players?
Yeah, I mean, the debate has started, and I would imagine a rethink will take place. I'm sure security will be beefed up for this morning's session that starts at 10 o'clock. But the thing about the Crucible is you have a one-table set up for the semi-final and the final. But for the earlier rounds, the first round, second round, and quarter-final, you have this divide that goes down. You have 2 tables. So the players are very close to the front row. And I think unless you're going to put screens up or you're going to have some sort of netting, you're always going to have fans very close. I mean, it is unprecedented. It's a one-off. Security will have to make sure that they check everyone now. They perhaps beef up that security coming into the arena, this Crucible Theatre here in Sheffield. But I think something's going to have to be done, because you can't have a repeat of that, basically. Yeah. And as I say, Just Stop Oil took responsibility for it last night, and we saw that with the Grand National, didn't we? Albeit of a slightly different environmental cause, that sporting events are being targeted.
Things are going to change, aren't they, Rob? I mean, Isabel mentioned Wimbledon there. We've got the FA Cup final to come. We've got, various test matches over the summer. A lot of big events. When you think of what our season holds in store, how will sport have to react to this, do you think?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of big sporting events in the next couple of months, and they could be and probably will be targeted. How does sport react? I mean, you've obviously got to have the security in place. You've got to stop people coming in and targeting them. But I think if people are determined to protest, if people are determined to do something to wreck a sporting event, it's going to be very hard to stop it. And then where do we stop the enjoyment? Do we go back to behind closed doors sport? I don't think we do. So I think sometimes you've got to accept these things are going to happen. And it's just unfortunate for the World Snooker Tour, that last night and this morning we pick up the papers, watch your show, they are the focus of the headlines.
Yeah. Even if people sympathise with what these guys stand for, the big danger for them is that they turn people off their message. Now, you were there in the auditorium last night. What was the reaction when people heard that, play couldn't go ahead?
Well, it's a bit too early in the morning to repeat exactly what they were saying at that precise moment. And there's obviously videos of them because the two people, it was a 30-year-old male and a 52-year-old woman, they were both arrested last night and having been detained by police, they were then arrested for criminal damage. So as they were carted off in the police car, there was a few choice words, shall we say, by the snooker fans. I mean, the thing is, their message, which they feel is justified, has been lost in all of this, in a way, really, because when you look on social media, I've looked at my feed and other people's, it's a lot of people criticising it, saying, why attack this particular sport? Especially when you consider something like F1 that uses a lot of oil, a lot of petrol to fly around the world. Snooker's predominantly a UK-based sport, so it doesn't really feel like it's high up there. If you're going to do a judge of climate change, I don't think snooker is one of the highest sports on the list with the bigger culprits. So I think it was quite a surprising thing to do, but the pictures are so graphic, that powder so striking, that it has actually captured the imagination. We're talking about it. It's on the back page of my newspaper this morning. So they've achieved some sort of aim, which is to get the publicity.
Yeah.
Rob, I covered World Snooker for many years in Sheffield, and something the heroes in all of this, not only security, but the men and women who come out and rebuild those tables. I mean, I presume you've seen it. I presume you see what they do and how they put the green bays on,
ironing
and how they iron the green bays, and they do all that. But basically, those tables would have been dismantled last night and reassembled overnight before 10 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they couldn't obviously do table one while there was play on table two. It would have created too much noise. So once Mark Allen finished his match, and he was almost burning the midnight oil by the time he finished, that went on to about 11 o'clock. By the time he'd finished and the crowd had gone, then the table fitters went straight in and they've reclothed it, recovered it. And yeah, the table should be, well, we'll find out when we speak to the players at 10 o'clock this morning how the conditions are. But the table has been done. And a word, I suppose, for Rob Walker, who you probably know, who's the MC here at the snooker, is a long-standing broadcaster. He got the mask on, donned the marigolds, and he got the Hoover out with the security personnel last night and started the salvage operation to try and clear it. So I think that for a lot of fans who'd paid a lot of money to watch last night, at least they were able to watch Mark Allen's match, that first round tie here at the Crucible, because as I said, had the protest had got on the second table, the play would have been suspended for the evening.
Just don't tell the Just Stop Oil protesters that he was burning the midnight oil. There'll be trouble. Rob Moore, really good to get your take. Thank you very much. Sports features editor for The Sun.
Thank you.
Now, you know when they say women aren't funny?
come on, I thought that was good. Did you like it?
I thought that was very witty.
Thanks. Did you hear me? I was so excited. I was trying to chip it in for the last few minutes. I got a good one.
I thought that was very good.
Thanks.
Very good there. Let us know your views on these protesters. You may agree with Just Stop Oil. Do you agree with their methods? Does that get more people interested, or does it turn people off their cause? And I just, what was that dust? Why was it orange?
Well, do you know what? Just as a pure journalist, I can see why this story has taken off. And again, the protesters are very savvy because it's a good picture story. I mean, it looks, particularly on the Times front page, it looks incredible. It's the contrast between the green of the table and the orange of the dust. It's a great picture, and therefore it sells newspapers, and therefore it's a good technique by the protesters. But, you know, why snooker exactly?
But you see, the thing is, it's a good technique for them because they know nothing will happen to them. And as I say, I made a point earlier, and I wasn't advocating this. I was simply saying that there would be more gun-happy countries that you couldn't judge whether an officer would have drawn a firearm.
Yeah, you could get shot for that in another country.
Or tasered or something. But here, they know, well, really nothing's going to happen with them.
Other than celebrity.
Would they get a baton across the back of the head elsewhere or whatever? But my fear was that what was in the dust? Is it flour? What is it? What is it? Why is it orange? And was it, you know, when you were sitting, I would have just got out. I just got straight out of the auditorium.
Oh, yeah, a bit jumpy as well.
Yeah. 7:20 is the time. Your views very welcome. We bring you up to date with the rest of the news stories happening on this Tuesday morning.
The government and the NHS may have underestimated what's being called an appalling racial disparity in maternal deaths. Research shows that black women are almost 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy, childbirth and postpartum than white women.
Ofgem has announced that all energy suppliers across England, Scotland and Wales have signed up to a code of practice to protect vulnerable customers. Technicians will wear body cameras and audio equipment and will not visit homes of those over 85 or with a terminal illness.
The first rehearsal for the King's coronation seen a military parade through the quiet streets of central London very early this morning. Hundreds of military personnel have practiced the route on horseback in preparation for the event, which is taking place, as we all know, on the 6th of May. Now, criminals who buy and sell machetes or so-called zombie knives could face longer jail sentences as the government moves to crack down on the blades.
Now, under these new rules, police will also be given more power to seize and destroy weapons.
This came to my attention shortly after I was appointed a few months ago, when members of Parliament came to me with constituency cases where these zombie knives with double serrated edges and in all kinds of strange shapes had been used to commit violent offences. And I couldn't see any reason at all why these need to be legal. And that's why today the Home Secretary and I are announcing this process to start to ban, essentially, those kind of knives. That there is no legitimate use for double-edged machetes or zombie knives. And when they're used, they can cause extremely nasty injuries. If you talk to trauma doctors in accident and emergency, they will tell you that the injuries these knives inflict are much because they've got double serrated edges or they've got jagged edges. They often inflict much more serious internal injuries than a normal knife. They're also used to intimidate people, whether it's used in muggings to get someone's watch or mobile phone or in gang warfare. So the short answer is there's no reason at all for people to have these, and that is why we're looking to ban them.
Utley, our political reporter in Westminster there this morning. The big surprise to me, Olivia, is that these things aren't banned already, and what the minister's announcing today may take some time if it comes about at all. Am I right?
Well, absolutely. I think that's what pretty much everyone in Westminster is thinking. Labour has pointed out, and rightly so really, that every single Conservative Home Secretary since 2010 has promised to ban these particular weapons, and yet for whatever reason it still hasn't happened. It's basically a loophole in the law, which means that police are unable to distinguish between any other kind of knives and these particular knives, which are obviously used mainly for sort of intimidation purposes and can inflict really horrible injuries. So it does seem pretty strange that the Conservatives haven't yet acted on their plan to outlaw them, and that, as you say, it is going to take a while. There's going to be a consultation open to the public running until June. And only then, after that consultation has been completed, will they start to move forward on this legislation. And after that, of course, we know that legislation takes a while to get through the processes in Parliament.
Thank you very much indeed.
The snooker situation, we're hearing John in Coventry saying protesters who ruined the evening's entertainment for the crowd should be made to reimburse the cost of the tickets. Either they should or their organisation should. Janice says when these people protest, newspapers and TV should not give them airtime, as this is what they want. Now, this was the Margaret Thatcher strategy in the 80s when she denied Sinn Féin, who was the political wing of the IRA, the oxygen of publicity. So she said they shouldn't have the oxygen of publicity. Just be interested in your views. Let us know.
Absolutely. But also want your views this morning on baby names. Do you like the name Avocado? Be in the playground. Avocado! Time to go home. Shouldn't laugh because somebody has actually called their child that. But you'd get a few looks.
Probably worse.
You'd get a few looks, would you not? My brother's called Hugh. My mum used to complain that she'd say in the playground, Hugh, and it would just go on the wind and he'd never come back.
Actually, I get more offended with dog names. You know, that people give their dogs really stupid names.
Like what?
Well, if I name the stupid one,
then you'll be in trouble.
The personal involved.
Come on.
Well, no, I'm talking about it. No, anyway. So, anyway, we are debating whether giving your child an unusual name helps them stand out or
makes them a target for bullying. That's after the break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hiya, nice to see you again. Okay, we're just going through your comments here. Keep
you
them,
want to do some views?
Yeah. TikToking in prison. Jeff in Leeds. Morning, Jeff. Jeff says you should look into staffing levels in prisons. They are shocking. One officer on a landing, 70 prisoners, claims Jeff. James says, my son's a prison officer and most phones come in via staff and there are no searches on entry except at predetermined time.
Helen in Derby says, whilst I understand prisoners are allowed downtime, at the end of the day, aren't they supposed to be punished for committing crimes? We're on the same page on this, Helen. Throwing themselves downstairs on chairs, aren't they having too much fun? And I do think when you said to me, oh, what do you want them to do? I think they should be doing something useful. Instead of larking around, they could be fixing things, making things, learning
baskets.
Skills. And there should be something, being educated, heaven forbid.
No, there should be
but
an
what
orange
they shouldn't be doing is
uniforms and
chucking themselves down the
filling
stairs
in
and
holes,
larking about
picking
on
up litter.
TikTok. Yeah,
Okay.
so there you go. That's my views.
So
Anyway,
you would have them all in striped uniforms and
no, that's what
chain
you
gang.
would do. I'm saying get them doing something useful.
I agree with you about something useful. I think
Yeah.
something useful.
So much needs doing.
But they're
Let's
still
be honest,
they're
we've got all
entitled to
these-
some sort of downtime, surely,
Yeah.
but not to make money from it. That's the thing.
Right, so in a moment we'll be discussing baby names, but just to give you a little insight into what else we've got coming up this morning, 7:45. We've been talking a lot about Lewis Capaldi. He's been raising awareness of Tourette syndrome after his new Netflix documentary. Really shocking if you've seen it. We'll be speaking to someone who also suffers from it and what the public should know about the condition, and I guess about how much Lewis Capaldi's involvement and diagnosis has helped the cause.
That's when you swear all the time, isn't it?
Well, he hasn't got that version. He has the tics, but it's really shocking.
There's that Egypt on the snooker table yesterday as well. Apparently he's been on GB News as
Yeah.
well. I haven't got a name for him, but
Just
anyway.
hot oil. Very good.
Okay. So Paul Coit with the sport, 8:20, talking more about all of that. Now, when it comes to being a Hollywood celebrity, it seems like it's almost a rite of passage to give your child an unusual name.
Yes, from Apple to Blue Ivy to Northwest. We've had plenty of names over the years for A-list parents, but is it a bit too much for us normal people, us mere civilians?
Well, we're going to discuss this now with mother of three. She's Imogen Tinkler, who thinks unique names are good for children. And Fahima Mohammed, a broadcaster there, who thinks, well, they could be a little bit cruel. Why do you think that, Fahima?
Hi. Yeah, I do think that because there are recent studies that show that there are subtle effects in self-perception, behavior, as well as some sort of interactions with others that children may have when they are given a unique name. As much as parents would love that for their children, it does come with baggage. And with everyday people, unfortunately, when children are just growing up, they are going to be teased for so many things, and your identity, your look, and definitely your name. And that's the first thing everyone asks. People will make fun of that. I hear that all the time, even from my own kids at school. And even if it's like something that's rude because they don't understand the cultural differences with certain pronunciations, at the end of the day, if it's seen in a particular way in the place in the environment that you are, then children are going to make fun. There's even a woman on TikTok just a month ago who was crying, bawling, saying she's been trolled because she's been named her baby Cozy and someone stitched her on there. talking about it, and she had so many bad comments. And this is an adult crying. Imagine her child going to school and being picked up on that. So unfortunately, as much as we want to be unique and different, it does come at a cost.
Well, Imogen, children can be incredibly cruel, can't they? And we're talking about this today because the Mail Online have revealed a child has been named Avocado, spelt Avacuddo. I mean, she's going to be bullied in the playground, isn't she?
I mean, children are called Olive, and that's a name that's come from the Bible, and I think it's a great name. And we call our children by fruits or flowers all the time. And I just think language is evolving so much. And why should someone be penalised because they've got that name? And instead of just automatically saying they're going to get bullied because that's the behaviour we've all exhibited, we should start to be thinking about how we change that and move that forward, because otherwise we're going to have the same names forever. And that just doesn't make sense to me.
You've named your child after a flower?
I've got one classic and one name that my parents objected to. So I've got William, which is pretty classic. But again, he has had that name abbreviated in school and come home in tears some days.
To what?
You can imagine.
What?
To Willie. And then he's got upset. And then I've got Poppy, who my parents said, are you sure you want to call her Poppy? Because it's in the top 3 dog names. And she's, you know, everyone's dog's called Poppy. We didn't take any notice. But, you know, we've had an email in, Fahima, from somebody called Basil. He says, I grew up in the 70s. Kids were cruel. Imagine having the name Basil and growing up with faulty towers. Mind you, it did make me the person I am today. I've learnt to look at life with a smile. So well done, Mum and Dad. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, Fahima.
Do you have any trouble,
Absolutely.
Imogen, do you have any trouble with Tinkler?
Yeah, I was Armstrong before, so it was a bit of a change to Tinkler, because all of a sudden people patted me on the head more and they teased me a little bit. But I kind of like it because you break down and you have a bit of banter at the beginning when you're going into things. But I kept Armstrong when I was at work because I noticed it did change when I was going into negotiation, how people would perceive me, which sometimes works in your favour.
But Fahima,
yes, there is definitely a different perception that people have when they look at you, and they do actually judge you, even with, you know, regards to your name, even if you're going into work professionally. But again, you know, with children, they're still learning. As much as adults, we have that perception of, you know, oh, they should grow into it and they will be that. But sometimes it goes through a bit of trauma to get through that and get over it. And some people don't get over it. I mean, traditional names are, you know, it's fine. It can be boring at sometimes and you want to go out of it. And in the US, it's quite normal to be called Dakota, Kenya, all of these things, the place that you met, which is fine, it's unique. But then when you get to, I want to call my child mayonnaise, and they can be called May, for example, you know, these kind of things can be looked at in a different way, and those children will have to pay the price for it.
Well, do you not both think that whatever you name your child, after the initial fuss dies down, the child just becomes, it's taken for granted, whatever it has been named, and everybody gets used to it? No? Yes?
Over time, yeah, there is an adaptation. But again, there was another dispute between couples where she wanted to name her brother after her brother who had passed away, Charles, which you'd think it's normal. And the husband was like, absolutely not, because our surname is Manson. So at the end of the day, you know, we don't want to be named after a criminal. So, you know, it really does depend, because you can get used to certain things, but it depends as to how far in society have we moved on certain things, like avocado after so many years. It will still be funny, still not be liked. Same with mayonnaise, whereas maybe London or Dakota or Kenya may be okay. So, you know, it really does depend on how ridiculous you're going to go and how far.
Go on. I mean, Fahima was talking about the name Lemonade. I have a friend who's called her child Barley, not that far from Lemonade, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. And another one called Arcadia. I do think you have to be careful, don't you, in criticising people's names, because these are carefully chosen. People don't name their children on a whim. Well, mostly. You know, you really agonise over what to call your children, and, you know, we shouldn't be making fun of people, should we, Imogen?
I really think we shouldn't. And if we make fun of it in our own homes, then that's what children go on to do at school. They reflect the behaviours that they see. And if we're positive and saying, why have that got that name? What's the meaning behind that name? I know my oldest child is Xanthi, and some people have mispronounced it as anthrax, which quite confuses me. And but she kind of laughs at it and goes, no, it's Xanthi with an X. That's her. That's how she describes it. And it really showcases who she is. But she loves it and it suits her, and I just think we need to stop worrying so much and stop judging other people on their names, and then the problem would go away.
Wait till she has an email
Unfortunately,
address.
human
and she has
behaviour
to
is
spell it
not
out.
like that. And, you know, at the end of the day, we would love to stop judging. We would love to do all of this. But you can just imagine the comments even after this with adults. And there would be a difference in the playground as well. So, unfortunately, humans are different to what we would always perceive. And you will see that in the comments afterwards.
Isabel hit the nail on the head there. She said, wait till they get an email address. Do you like my name, girls? Could you even have an attempt at spelling my name?
I'm dyslexic.
One M, two N's.
Okay, about right.
And Holmes with an L. Gosh, yeah, that must be
all you have to do is to say amen. That'll do. That'll do me.
Well, we'll
Amen.
say amen to this section, ladies. Thank you so much for giving us your perspectives. It's always a good debate on what we should call our children.
Thank you, Nicola Sturgeon. Could she quit as a MSP? We'll be going through the papers asking that question. Emily Carver, Sean McDonald, next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us to go through the newspapers. We've got Sean McDonald, we've got Emily Carver. Very nice to see both of them. The Eye says Sturgeon may never return to Scottish Parliament. SNP insiders believe.
Yeah, hyperbole again. I don't know who the person is that's claiming it, but the assertion of the claim is that Nicola Sturgeon, has been forced to deny claims that she's planning to quit as an MSP after it's revealed that she'll not be attending Scottish Parliament this week. I think that was already due to happen, though, because Hamza Yousaf is due to deliver a key speech today at Holyrood, setting out his priorities as First Minister. I don't think that she'll step down. If she does step down, I think it will be a bit of a surprise, and I think it'll be because she can't be bothered.
But it's a bit strange that she's not in Holyrood this week.
No, I think literally it's so that the focus isn't on her. That would be my understanding.
I don't buy that.
My interpretation.
I think it's because there's so much scrutiny from the police on the finances.
I think
and
it was
whether
announced.
she was involved in potentially covering them up.
I think it was announced that she already wasn't going to be there. It makes sense. If the new First Minister's coming in and he's setting out his plans, then you don't want to be taking the... And I think in light of everything that's happened, I think it's also going to be more of a spotlight on her. So we'll see. I mean, give it a week, and if she's not back...
It's funny how she used to love the spotlight, isn't it?
Well, I mean, she was First Minister. What did you want her to do? Sit in the shadows?
No, but I mean, since all this dodgy finances has come up, she's become a bit shy since the police stopped by her house.
She's a lawyer,
but what do you do? Well, Isabel says she is a lawyer. I mean, you just don't go back to a bit of house conveyancing now after this. You know, if she was to seek a living again in the real world, how do you go from being First Minister in Scotland?
Her next role, as far as I'm aware, there was a role on the table for her at the United Nations as part of, I think it was a climate change body. I'm not too sure the exact role. So that was on the cards 2019. COVID rolls in. I think that will be her next move. Don't know when.
Yeah.
I think she's got a lot to offer in politics. If you let's look at Theresa May as a parallel. I think Theresa May is actually more effective as a former Prime Minister, as an MP. Now, you look at some of the campaigns that she's involved in, or the amount of attention that's given when she asks a question. And I think Nicola Sturgeon will probably go on to do the same. And I think she'll still be very instrumental or very useful from the backbenches.
She's cleared of everything, and at the moment there is this investigation ongoing. Obviously, no charges have been brought, but if there is any doubt, you cannot have any credibility, and I think it will always distract, and therefore you'll become incredibly ineffective on the backbenches.
I agree, but Hamza Yousaf actually made a very good point, a very pertinent point, where he said she shouldn't be castigated or...
Well, he would say that. I mean,
hold on. She shouldn't be castigated for her husband's doings, and it's her husband that was arrested. It was her husband that was
yes, but he wasn't involved in her party. It's not just, unrelated allegation. I mean, he was the CEO of the party that she was, the First Minister for.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Times are running with how the police are examining emails that suggest she declined to open party finances to scrutiny as part of the investigation. She's also about this hundreds of thousands of pounds that have just gone missing. I mean, it's not looking good for Nicola Sturgeon.
Doesn't look.
I wouldn't give her the benefit of the doubt necessarily.
You wouldn't.
What I would love to see is a deep investigative documentary into how her and the hubby went about the camper van. Where they went to, how often did they get to use it, a little camera on board. Channel 5 used to do celebs in a camper van.
Gogglebox, but for the...
It's Coach Trip. That's
Coach Trip.
Yeah.
And
karaoke.
Do they have a little portable stove, and do they brew up, and where do they pull into lay-bys and camper parks? Have you ever been to a camper park and Nicola Sturgeon and her husband pulled up next door to you? Hiya, Nicola, how are you? What are you doing here?
That's fantastic.
That would be...
Well, I thought they hadn't used it. I thought they hadn't used it.
I think by all accounts it's not left to drive.
It was just left in the drive?
I think it's just...
So it's like bullseye or competition. We say, this is what you could have won, this magnificent camper van. I always thought, what if you won the speedboat in those competitions?
Where are you
what
putting
would
that?
you have done with it?
Exactly. What if you don't have a car?
People do have boats on their driveways. Anyway, let's talk about the state of the economy.
Could I just say, there's a very funny camera shot keeps popping up here and takes me, but people may catch me thinking I'm sleeping or reclining here. The reason I have to do it is that Isabel can't see the guest. So and it's a straight line here, so she can't see the guest. So show me the camera shot, Tom, the one I don't like. Where it is, sorry. So you may come and see me like this every now and again, but it's only so Isabel can see past.
You're so gallant.
You look like Jacob Rees-Mogg in the Commons. Having a little sleep.
It's Jacob Rees-Mogg's defence.
With a slightly less haunted face.
Emily, tell us about the state of the economy. The Express will have it that things are rosy.
Yes. Well, you just read out the unemployment figures, which have gone up a little bit, 3.7 to 3.8. But apparently, business confidence is in a fantastic place, according to the Express. To be fair, they have gone to a number of different analysts at various banks and investment firms and things. And there is some optimism about the fact inflation is starting to fall, at least when it comes to key commodities, including energy. So hopefully we'll see that in our own bills and in our own supermarket baskets soon. But yes, apparently people are feeling a little bit more confident about business investment. We know that that is very important. If people feel confident about an economy, that usually leads to positive growth. Yes, a quarter of CFOs are feeling more optimistic about the financial prospects of their businesses than they were 3 months ago. So that might come as a bit of a surprise because it has been doom and gloom.
Yeah, last week the IMF had the worst major economy in the world.
Well, hopefully the IMF are wrong
this year.
And the Express is right, hopefully.
Can we just quickly, before we move on, because I had a wee look at the numbers, in business investment in the UK in 2020, it fell by 11.9%.
Well, it would, because that was the pandemic.
Yeah, but in 2021 and 2022, it grew by 12.7%. So that is 0.8% growth. So actually, it's below what you would be expecting for an economy the size and strength, or supposedly, of the UK. And GDP growth fell by 11% in 2020, and it grew by 12.7%. 2021-22 combined. Now, the forecast for 2023 is 0.2% growth. That is alarming. So that is a very misleading headline, to be honest. And I think it is a typical example of maybe sub-editors and journalists doing different things, because the headline says, you know, this is great, cause for celebration. But when you take a wee look at the table that's on there, it's actually, you know, it's far from it.
Well, to be fair, if you do look at 2020, I mean, negative growth of 11%. It's going to take a little while to, you know, get it back up into, you know, big double-digit growth figures.
Down, didn't they? So it was a question of
0.2% growth, though. It's alarming.
But yes, there are things the government could be doing to make growth a little quicker, and of course, getting people back into work.
Yes, it's the economic
is a crucial one.
Emily, thank you very much indeed. Sean, thank you very much indeed. The guys are going to be back in 40 minutes' time.
I'm going to keep Sean in for this next item because he knows, or at least has interviewed, and I'm told, am I allowed to say this? Kissed on the lips, Lewis Capaldi. There, I've said it. We all know Lewis Capaldi has released his long-awaited second album, but also this incredible intimate documentary on Netflix where he reveals his struggles with anxiety and Tourette syndrome. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I watched it over the weekend, not knowing we were doing this item, and I genuinely came away from it rattled, is the only way to describe it.
So does he swear a lot?
No, he hasn't got a vocal tick, although that may well come. But, I mean, he's an anxious person naturally and quite depressed at times, which makes beautiful music. But as he's been in high-pressure situations, he's developed terrible tics. You can see a little clip of the documentary now.
Anxiety is out of control. I feel like I'm in a race against the clock to get my mental health in order. Other people are depending on me to get better, and I know that I can. If we're going to do this, we're doing it properly. Launch! That's a bad omen.
I just want to stress, by the way, before we talk to somebody from the Tourette's Action Trust, is how huge a musician Lewis Capaldi is. I mean, he had the biggest selling, I think, single and album for 2 years in a row. I mean, he's been streamed billions of times. He's done world tours. He's a huge and original and genuine talent that we've produced in this country. But he's got imposter syndrome and he's really struggled with it. So I hadn't realised quite how mega he was.
He's got Tourette's syndrome as well. And we want to talk to Dr. Edward Palmer about that, a trustee at Tourette's Action and living with Tourette's. And maybe, Doctor, you can give us some sort of insight as the documentary does, what it is like living with Tourette's syndrome. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, absolutely. So I've had the symptoms of Tourette's that you call tics since I was about 4 or 5. And since then, I've had tics every day, probably for most of the day. And it's hard, and it can be really hard at times. So most of my tics generally are fairly manageable. I have a bad neck tic that I do. I have some tics in my face. But there are times where my tics can be really, really bad. So like Lewis, at stressful times, if I've got exams, for example, which as a trainee doctor I have quite a lot of, there've been times where I've ticked my fingers so bad that I rip the skin, or, tick my eyes so much I get terrible headaches. And there are people that live with really severe tics all of the time. And I've seen it be a really debilitating condition. People having problems talking or communicating because their tics are so frequent, or problems walking or eating because the tics or the pain from their tics is so bad.
Well, Lewis Capaldi in this documentary says that performing and making music make his tics, his symptoms worse. Why do you think that is, and is that a typical reaction?
Well, what is common, and this is what I gleaned from the documentary, was that, as Isabel pointed out, this was an immensely stressful time for Lewis, with a huge amount of pressure and expectations around producing his second album. And I got the impression that what he was saying, actually, it was that was making his tics so much worse, rather than the performing or the music itself. And that is very common, that stress or anxiety can make tics worse. Often what people find is that if they do something that they really love, that they're really engrossed in, that actually their tics can improve a little bit. It's almost like they're distracted from them. But we also know there are lots of other things that can make people's tics worse, like being in a very stimulating environment, like doing a concert in front of millions of people, and excitement as well.
It's so difficult for Lewis, isn't it, Doctor? Because he's basically at the helm of this juggernaut. They all are feeding off his success. There's his managers, you've got the record label, you've got the songwriters, you've got the performers, you've got the people who've bought tickets. Everybody's invested in him. They want him to perform, and yet it's not doing him any good. Can he manage his symptoms, do you think, going forward, given how severe it was? I mean, just to explain, at times he's developed a huge muscle on one of his shoulders because he's basically doing a workout all the time on one side, and it was absolutely heartbreaking to watch. I mean, can he get any semblance of normality, or does he have to step away, in your professional opinion?
So obviously, I don't know Lewis. I've never met him in any kind of clinical capacity, but I can talk more generally. And people do learn to live with their condition, and there are different interventions that we can do. There are different specific behavioural therapies that can be helpful. There are medications that can be helpful. And then there are things, learning to deal with our tics as we get older. So Lewis mentioned about being on medication to help manage his anxiety. That can improve things for people. And I, for example, I see an osteopath every month or 2 months to help with the shoulder pain that I get. Lots of these things will help. And actually, if performing is something that Lewis is passionate about and is obviously immensely successful at, then the last thing he should do is walk away. And I think it's important that people can feel positive about the condition. There are things that we can do. And actually, people with Tourette's, we know, can be more creative as well.
I'm sure that's
Doctor,
true.
good luck to you with your own personal issues with Tourette's, and thank you for explaining everything so well. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Edward Turner. He's a trustee at Tourette's Action and Living with Tourette's. Thank you very much.
I just want a really quick thought from you, Sean, because
and she means really quick.
Yeah, really quick.
15
but,
seconds.
He's a bit of a legend. Tell us your impressions of him.
A very good person, a very decent guy, obviously a fantastic performer, very talented, but I think ultimately a good guy. Close friends of mine, which is how that wee satellite sort of encounter has come. And you kind of wish him all the best, but he's fantastic. He'll bounce back. He'll bounce back.
Well, let's hope
lad,
so,
Sean.
because I do love his songs.
OK, we're going to stay with us. We'll have more on the ethics investigation into the Prime Minister. He will have a cabinet meeting this morning. We'll preview all of that and much more after the weather.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister prepares to chair Cabinet as he faces an ethics investigation into his wife's financial interests.
Very good morning. Welcome to the programme. It's just gone 1 minute past 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 18th of April. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading the news this morning, the Parliamentary Ethics Watchdog has launched an investigation into whether Rishi Sunak should have declared his wife's links to a company given a boost in the budget. The PM maintains he declared the interest privately and correctly.
Criminals who buy and sell machetes, also called zombie knives, could face longer jail sentences as the government moves to crack down on the blades. Policing Minister Chris Philp told us there's no need for these weapons to be on the streets.
Constituency cases where these zombie knives with double serrated edges and in all kinds of strange shapes had been used to commit violent offences, and I couldn't see any reason at all why these need to be legal.
The government may sanction all those involved in the trial of anti-Putin activist Vladimir Kara-Murza. The Russian-British dual national was sentenced yesterday to 25 years for criticising the war in Ukraine.
And the World Snooker Championship was disrupted last night after a Just Stop Oil protester poured orange powder onto one of the tables. The display forced a 24-hour suspension of the match between Robert Milkins and Joe Perry.
And you've been very good expressing your views on this. It hasn't gone down well. You don't think it's done the cause any good. Tony says there's always some form of security at sports events. But last time at the horse racing and now at the snooker, it seems security is just not good enough.
And Kim says the lack of charges and being held to account for their actions will encourage protesters to more criminality.
Keep them coming in. There's how you do it. So the top story this morning is that Rishi Sunak will chair Cabinet as the Parliamentary Ethics Watchdog launches an investigation into his family's financial ties.
The Prime Minister's facing accusations that he failed to disclose that his wife holds shares in a childcare agency that's given support in the budget.
Now, earlier we spoke to the Policing Minister, Chris Philp, who told us the Prime Minister has acted correctly.
Well, I think no one really doubts Rishi's integrity and ethics. He has declared, as he said to the committee, I think at the time, and in his subsequent letter on the 4th of April, that he has declared his wife's interests in his ministerial declaration. He did draw attention to that to the committee when he gave evidence, and he also wrote to them subsequently as well. And obviously he'll work with the Standards Commissioner to clear up any questions that are outstanding. But I don't think there's anything sinister here. He has made his ministerial declaration.
Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, with his take on all of this. How much damage, how serious has the Prime Minister to take this committee?
Yeah, I think it could be quite damaging, not least of all because we're only a matter of weeks away from a local election, Eamonn. And this is a local election in which the Conservative Party is already expected to get a drubbing. And this is a Prime Minister who's tried to distance himself, if you like, over the last 6 months from previous Conservative Prime Ministers and their scandals. And yet here I am in Downing Street talking about Rishi Sunak potentially being involved in a scandal. Now, be in no doubt, Downing Street do deny any wrongdoing. They do insist that this declaration was made properly. It all seems to relate back to his appearance at the Liaison Committee last month. That is a committee of senior MPs who get to interrogate the Prime Minister every 6 months or so, and whether he was open and frank to MPs about his wife's shares in this childcare company, a childcare company that could benefit from some of the changes to the budget that Jeremy Hunt announced last month as well. As I say, though, Labour, while they accuse this of being a black hole of integrity, and the Liberal Democrats suggesting that the Prime Minister may well have bent the rules, Downing Street will cooperate with this inquiry, and they claim the Prime Minister will be exonerated. But as I say, it is not a good look for a Prime Minister hosting Cabinet this morning that this is on many of today's front newspapers.
What about Cabinet this morning? I mean, you're on Downing Street because in the next few minutes we'll start to see a few Secretaries of State walking along there, heading in for their weekly meeting with the Prime Minister. What do you think will be on the agenda? I mean, they'll be kicking themselves about this misstep from the Prime Minister, won't they? But they'll have their eyes on more serious things like what to do to solve the crisis with the strikes and also the situation with this British-Russian national getting that unprecedented sentence yesterday.
Yeah, there's no doubt, I think, that before the Easter break, and actually I was talking to MPs in Parliament last night, there was a sense that people were pretty chipper within the Conservative Party. You know, there was a sense with the Windsor framework, with that initial deal, at least with NHS workers, and with a closing in the polls, that actually Rishi Sunak was starting to make an impact with the public, and that going into this election campaign, they may well be able to win some people over. And as I say, that has somewhat been dented this morning. There's little doubt about that. Though the Prime Minister would say, as you rightly point out, he needs to focus on kind of some of the key objectives of the government, trying to deal with the small boats crisis, trying to deal with those strike actions that are likely to plague the National Health Service and indeed other industries for weeks, maybe even months to come. But in the end, it is that damage to the Conservative brand that I think is most concerning for the party. There are a lot of people who feel that it is time for change. In saying that, Rishi Sunak is hoping, as I say, to turn that tanker around. This scandal is just not going to help that cause.
Yeah, OK, Darren, thanks very much indeed. Give us a shout if you spot any people going in.
Nicola Sturgeon's facing fresh calls to quit after a leaked video shows the ex-First Minister dismissing financial concerns.
It comes as Scottish Parliament reconvenes today with Humza Yousaf laying out his priorities for Scotland.
Well, we're joined now by political commentator Ian McWhirter for more. Ian, good talking to you again. This is a bit of a soap opera, this Nicola Sturgeon business. What do you think? I see one of the newspapers is predicting she may never return to Scottish Parliament again. They're saying that comes from SNP insiders.
Well, I think that would be strange, really, to be fair, because, you know, she is an elected member of that Parliament, and it's her, you know, it's the voters who installed her there. So I don't think it's for newspapers necessarily to say that the First Minister should, you know, go and hide in a hole somewhere. Remember, people were talking about her resigning. She already has resigned. She resigned 2 months ago on the 15th of February. And, you know, we still are not entirely clear why she did that, because no one was expecting it, least of all other members of her party. But there is a question here, and I think your viewers should. Everybody's loving this because they love to see the downfall of politicians like Nicola Sturgeon. You know, it's hubris, punished, all the rest of it. She was very, there were very legitimate criticisms of the way she managed the Scottish government. But look, we've also got to remember that this was the result of a police raid just under 2 weeks ago, in which they erected a forensic tent in her front garden, put 6 police officers standing around with their police cars posing for the cameras, apparently were digging up her garden. And I think a lot of people are beginning to wonder now, what was that all about? Because her reputation has now been shattered for all time. These images, as Professor John Curtis says, will never be erased from the public mind. So if she wants to get back into politics, it's going to be very difficult for her. And so I think there is a question here that everyone's assuming something about her, that she's guilty of something. And in fact, she's not been charged with anything whatsoever. She's not even been arrested and questioned. It was her husband who was arrested and questioned. So I think we just need to be a little bit careful about rushing to judgment.
Well, okay, but what is it all about? I mean, you're saying, you're asking the question. Can you give us the answer?
Well, this is the problem, you see. What we know, all we know, because remember, everyone's under very strict restrictions on what they can say in Scotland because of this Contempt of Court Act and the fact that they have locked up journalists in the past for, you know, stating facts which, you know, the Crown Prosecution Service wasn't very happy with. That they suggested that that was in some way compromising the identities of anonymous individuals in a trial. This is, again, everybody is on tenterhooks here, right? Nobody wants to say what's really going on. All we do know is that there has been an investigation into party finances and whether £600,000, which was raised specifically for a referendum campaign, whether it was used for that or used for other purposes within the SNP. Now, I mean, I don't know anything about this case, but that on the face of it doesn't seem to me to be a criminal matter. It is obviously the police have a different view of that.
Ian.
But you know, questions are being raised about whether or not it was right to have what was effectively a dawn raid on the First Minister of Scotland. Hugely publicised and creating this image, which, as I say, will never depart from the public mind.
No, I take your point that it appears at the moment, given there are no charges, to certainly have been heavy-handed. But if there was one woman in the United Kingdom that you would think could stand up for herself if there was a miscarriage of justice, it would be a highly trained and highly competent public speaker. It would be Nicola Sturgeon. I mean, if there's been something wrong, she'll tell us. But the point is, the ongoing investigation is happening. And you talk about she's already quit, but she hasn't left the party. And I think there's lots of speculation with her absence from Holyrood this week. Could she walk away from the SNP?
Well, she has walked away from the SNP, but she is still an elected member of the Scottish Parliament, remember. I mean, she's not resigned from the SNP, but she did resign as First Minister.
That's what I mean.
So she is certainly very semi-detached from her party at the moment, but she is an elected member, remember. I mean, you just imagine yourself, if the police had come to your front garden, erected a forensics tent, and had police posing for Sky News outside your front door, you would want to know what was going on. I don't think anybody could have suggested that she was going to do a bunk, or that she was going to try and flee for the border, or that she was going to sort of resist arrest. I mean, it's a very, very strange situation in Scotland that's happened. And as I say, her image, whatever you think of Nicola Sturgeon, her image now is forever tarnished by this experience. And by this strange controversy about which we still know next to nothing, except that it was about some administrative use of campaign funds, which, who knows whether that is, certainly from her point of view, I don't think it really is any charge that can be laid at her door, because, it was her husband who was the CEO of the Scottish National Party, and if there's any criminality involved there, and he was arrested, but then he was released. We don't know anything about that. We have to just be a little bit careful about joining a feeding frenzy when we don't really know what has happened.
OK, Ian, thank you for I was going to say enlightening, but we don't really know what happened. We don't
None the
really
wiser, but perhaps that's the bottom of it.
Ian McWhirter's a political commentator. Thank you very much indeed for your time today, Ian. The time, 13 minutes now past 8 o'clock.
Now.
It's...
You don't.
What?
Don't worry. I thought you were stopping. Carry on. Ignore me.
I'm going to talk about birds, bird flu.
Flockdown.
Bird flockdown.
As it's been
Lockdown. Yeah, and the reason we're talking about this is that birds that are locked down, or captive birds, are finally allowed to stretch their wings outside. Avian influenza restrictions have come to an end. This applies particularly to England and Wales.
Well, our South East of England reporter, Ray Addison, has been to speak to some chicken keepers about how so-called flockdown has affected them. A warning, though, the following images are disturbing.
Morning, girlies.
Joe Newman calls it flockdown.
Hello.
A hobbyist chicken keeper, for more than 5 months she's had to keep her backyard birds caged in West Sussex as part of government regulations to stop the spread of H5N1, or the bird flu virus.
Good girls. It's very apparent that bird flu is around this area. We've had a couple of birds found in the garden that were suffering from that. They've been just dead on the floor, which is a horrible thing to find. The reason we got chickens was to give them a better life and being able to be out in the garden and just living out their natural lives. And they've been inside there for a long time. I'm really excited to see them out in the ground, pecking at the insects, scratching in the ground. We will still have to maintain an area of caution, disinfect our feet and our hands and we go in and out of the coop, make sure that we're keeping an eye on what's happening with bird flu in the area.
Whilst the lockdown has been an inconvenience for hobbyists, poultry farmers have seen the biggest impact. Susie McMillan owns 12,000 chickens at Max Farm in East Sussex. Although she supports the end of restrictions, she's worried that businesses with avian influenza face a huge financial impact.
It's like £100,000 probably just to clean this shed and this farm up. One shed, I've got 2. There's no insurance for that. We would not make it. We would have to sell up and go. It's absolutely terrifying, even though I'm excited they're going out. Ultimately, as soon as they go outside, you've got wild birds flying right across them and potentially defecating in their fields or dropping dead in their fields. So it is just a case of cross your fingers and let them out. You know, there isn't the help there, and that's why farmers are not restocking.
The lockdown has come to an end as thousands of migrating birds return to our coastlines, possibly bringing the virus back with them. Jeff Knott is Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds.
We're waiting with bated breath and not with any small amount of concern to see what this summer is going to bring. As we speak, seabirds are landing back in their breeding colonies on the cliffs around the British coast, and we're really concerned what might happen with the virus this year. So we don't know for sure, we keep our fingers crossed, but we're extremely concerned with how widespread the virus remains and therefore what the potential impact on our seabirds in particular could be this year.
Although the restrictions are now over, the government is still urging bird owners to disinfect their garden surfaces, to fence off ponds and use deterrents to keep wild birds away. Even then, only time will tell if cases continue to fall. Ray Addison, GB News.
Well, there was all that scare around Christmas about free-range eggs, about turkeys, all sorts of things like that. Maybe this will be the start of easing all that pressure on supermarkets.
My brother keeps chickens. I mean, this is just anecdotal, but they've stopped laying eggs recently. And I wondered if that was from being cooped up all the time. But they're back out and about now. Maybe they'll start laying. Obviously, they stopped laying as much during winter, but they haven't kicked back in.
But stress could stop them
maybe.
Doing that. Yeah. OK, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories on this Wednesday morning.
The rate of unemployment in the UK rose to 3.8% in the 3 months to February. Data from the Office for National Statistics also reveals that pay continues to grow more slowly than prices, so earnings are falling in real terms.
Ofgem has announced that all energy suppliers across England, Scotland and Wales have agreed to a new code of practice to protect vulnerable customers. They will now forcibly installing prepayment meters in the homes of people over the age of 85 is going to be banned. Technicians will also be required to wear body cameras and audio equipment.
The First rehearsal for the King's coronation has
This is
seen
the
a
first outdoor rehearsal.
That's
isn't it?
right, they're
Yes.
doing indoor ones. A military parade through the quiet streets of central London in the early hours this morning. Hundreds of military personnel practiced the route on horseback in preparation for the event, which is shortly coming on the 6th of May. Very great privilege, didn't we, whilst we were doing the coverage in the lead up to the Queen's funeral, of seeing lots of the rehearsals, because we would get to the Mall just outside Buckingham Palace before, I suppose, the sun had come up. It was all dark, and you'd have all of them out marching, practicing, because, you know, we all expect it all to go perfectly well on the day, but these guys have to get their training in.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's been going on inside the palace for a few weeks now, but it's high pressure. Eyes of the world are going to be on this.
Aye, and that's what, Saturday week, is it?
Let me think. No,
Saturday
2
week.
weeks on Saturday.
2 weeks on Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay, right, okay. Please do stay with us. We're going to continue talking about the disruption of the World Snooker Championship. What did you think of that by Just Stop Oil protesters? Paul Coyte having his say, and the football results last night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess I've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Well, it's snooker that grabs the headlines this morning with the sport and Paul Coyte. World Snooker Championships making front page news this morning, Paul, and very spectacular scenes. Certainly they've achieved what they wanted to, but, it's such a hushed auditorium in there. And for that protest, that outrage to have happened, what did you make of it?
Well, there was two, wasn't there? It was the Robert Milkins, Joe Perry one, and that's the first one where we saw the protester go on with the orange powder, whatever it is, whether it be paint, whether it be dye, and give it the shake and it all goes all over the table. The interesting thing was that they're trying to brush it off. They were trying to hoover, I guess, trying to get a vacuum cleaner on there and trying to hoover it off. Then, when we look at the sport version, then once he's gone and then the protesters moved out the way, then they try to clean it. But what do they do with the balls? Do they continue then from where they left off? It's not easy to put all those balls back on.
The frame would have to be...
It's a no frame.
Null and void. I would have thought so.
It's a no frame. And also the base, I mean, it's one thing trying to clean it. So they've now had to relay it with new bays. So that's going to be tomorrow. And then the other one, which is on the other game...
No, it'll be ready by 10 o'clock today, I think.
Well, it should be. How long does it take? They get the old thing and put it on there?
Well...
It shouldn't take long.
They would have to bring the slate out and whatever. Depends if they want the slate bed there or not. But, the idea, however helpful they thought they were being, coming on with a vacuum cleaner and trying to take that off. My whole point was you didn't know if this was contaminated with something or not. And...
Sure.
And apparently they can't replace the whole table because of the base. I don't know, but they can relay it by 10 o'clock this morning.
Well, there was the woman that was on the other table who tried to glue herself. I don't know how quickly the glue sets.
Oh, I think pretty quickly.
Is it pretty fast? Because I've done it with my fingers every time I try and glue something. So onto the table, maybe just wheel the table out and then go, OK, well, you can stay there and we'll bring a new table in. But anyway, it's done. It's happened. So let's just hopefully there's not going to be any more problems.
Security will be very different from today onward.
Well, all sporting events, you have security, but they face outwards towards the crowd, and you wouldn't expect to have that at snooker. So maybe there will be more. In fact, there will be definitely more security.
Well, I was making the comparison to Monica Seles in the 90s at
Stabbing,
Wimbledon. When she was stabbed, and after that, they've just increased the distance between the seats and the public. And I guess they're just going to have to look at whether they put screens up or...
Do you know, there are certain sporting events you get an intimacy that you don't get elsewhere. Golf is one that you can stand so close to the players. What else? Tennis at Wimbledon, where you're actually so close and see things happen. And then you go to a football stadium with 100,000 people in it and you're up on the gods and you might as well watch it at home. And there's certain things you just can't get close to. Formula One you can't really get close to as well. But we're very privileged that snooker is one of those events that you can, get a real intimacy.
Absolutely. But and the thing is, with different sports, it's about the atmosphere. It's about being there. And there are different atmospheres. You could be a million miles away watching Barcelona play, but the atmosphere it's what you feel. And so when anybody says, I watch this on TV, it's never the same. It doesn't matter what sport it is to actually experience, like boxing as well. If you watch it, you don't realise the power in some of these fighters.
Let me tell you something.
You didn't box, did you? Please no.
Oh, no, but I was a reporter at ringside, and I remember being in the Ulster Hall in Belfast watching Barry McGuigan fight, and I'm sitting writing my notes down for the 10:30 bulletin at night, and start wiping my face like that.
No, it wasn't. Not more blood.
No, well, it wasn't blood, but it was sweat and slobbers.
From the
So every time they were hit, of course, in their body, it would all come your direction, especially if you were.
Did they tell you to get out of the ring at this point?
No, but it's just the fact of where it all happens now. You talk about getting up close and personal.
Yes.
And when you get a chance to meet a sporting hero, I want to show this Arsenal footage now. This Arsenal mascot fan. And they've posted a video on their video page, making memories with our mascot. Now, have a look and tell us what you think about this, but there has been a lot of judgment. This shows, as you'll see now, a young girl getting a shirt signed by the players. And the question can be the players and what sort of contact they have with the young girl.
Oh, bless her. She's looking at them, trying to get some eye contact.
Yeah.
And...
you know, if this, you know, a lot of us, if you were asked to do this, you'd say, hello, how are you? What's your name? Whatever,
you would hope so. You would hope so.
But here's part of the problem. What these guys have in their ears, they have these headphones and they're in a separate world and they know very little about communication. I remember once being with one of my sons and he was on the warm-up had happened on the pitch and he was in the tunnel.
Come on.
And he said to the player involved, very famous player, he said to him, can I have a picture with you? And the whole thing was that he was told he looked like this player, so he wanted this picture.
Right.
And the player said, I'm in the zone. I'm in the zone. I can't talk to you. I'm in the zone.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was 15 minutes or so before the game. You know, I sort of understand that. At least he addressed him or he spoke to him. But the criticism there, tell us what you make of all of this.
Look, we can say, oh, they are in their zone, but I think...
They're not in their zone, but...
Well, let me tell you what I think. It's just common decency. It's a young girl, it's a little girl, and I've spoken to players about this in the past. I've spoken to very famous players about this in the past. I remember, I mean, this is a very quick one. When I was a little kid, and I went to a Spurs training ground, I was like 7 years old, and John Pratt, an old player, hit the ball, came off, and it hit me in the hand.
Yeah.
And he came over and he said... Are you all right, son? I never forgot it. I still remember it like it was yesterday. And I still...
But you weren't all right since that day.
I know. Well, I know. That was it. I nearly lost my damn hand. But apart from that... But the thing is, I've said that to players, and I can see sometimes I think, oh, no, it's that important. Yeah. When you see a child... For example, that little girl will remember that for the rest of her life. Now, she might be thinking at that time, wow, they're there, I'm getting a signature. It's most of us that are looking, thinking... Just say hello.
It was just her little eyes. You could see her first person that came along. She was sort of waiting, and then
not
by the
one
end
of them.
She gave up. But the thing is that really annoys me about that is I suspect a lot of those players are parents themselves, kids. They should know better. Like, they know what children need and want. Or someone just to give her a little, you know, scruff of the hair or a little cheeky...
Izzy, I've seen players. I've seen players in a queue, standing there, signing autographs, and there's children there, and they've gone... That's it, I've gone.
Oh, I can't
and I'm
bear
like,
it.
how is this happening?
Yeah.
They're parents as well. But for some reason, it's like, well, I'm this important. It just takes nothing just to be able to look them in the eye, say, how are you? That's all it takes. And there's a lot that do that.
Just to remember when they were kids, there are a lot who do it. And I would say, you watch somebody, you know, over my years, seeing people, impeccable, David Beckham.
Yep.
You watch someone like
he
David Beckham.
goes above and beyond.
Above and beyond. Eric Cantona, I've seen
is
it.
the same. Yep.
Can I just say, actually...
But I would just want to say, before you...
Yeah, and then I'll...
There are players that could... I can't put it directly, but they just can't be bothered.
Yeah.
They can't be bothered. And they don't do it, and they don't look, and they don't recognise the kids, and they don't want to sign autographs.
But
and that's their
I think
thing.
you can broaden it out as well. I know this is the sports segment, but it's not just sports stars that this happens with. It's also, you know, other celebrities. And I will say, Eamonn, sometimes it annoys me because we're in a rush to go from A to B. But whenever Eamonn gets stopped, it doesn't matter who it is, you will always take the time. And we get stopped pretty much everywhere you go, don't we? Mobbed, if I'm honest.
I'm so grateful.
No, but genuinely, I can't walk down the street without people coming up 5 or 6 times every time we go anywhere. And you always take the time.
Well,
and I actually, it's very impressive. And
it's
it makes
it's part of my job. And also, you know, my father was a gentleman. He was so personable with everybody. And if any of my brothers were famous, they would do exactly the same. And it just depends your attitude to people.
I know, but we're always in a rush, and I'm like, oh, come on. But actually, it makes
You should be one of my kids.
People. I know.
They say, what's he talking to now?
But there'll be a day. There'll be a day with some of those players. Maybe in 20 years, maybe 30 years.
Yes.
They'll walk down the street.
No one will want their autograph.
Nobody will know them. And they'll be standing there thinking, where did it all go? Nobody wants my autograph anymore.
Yeah.
So make the most of it, enjoy it, and also treat people respectfully. And it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's more important, and it's a good... But the amazing thing is that the website or the actual Twitter said, making memories. They could not see that there was any problem with what was going on there.
I think they will now.
I hate to tell them, some of them I didn't even know today when they're at the height of their fame, but, you know, there you go. Okay. So, listen, I talk to you all day, but my producer tells me otherwise.
Right.
So we saw...
Got to do other stuff.
Got to do other stuff.
I've got stuff from the weekend. I'm going to hold it over to tomorrow.
Yeah.
There was one yesterday, and I'll hold it. I'm going to leave it because it's a good one. So we'll hold it for tomorrow.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Paul Coit there. Thank you very much indeed.
By the way, could you sign this, please?
No, but you see, there is a saying, if you can't be anything else, be nice. You know, just be nice.
Yeah.
Right.
What makes a man? Manners make a man.
And I
anyway,
do have to say, I remember the ones who didn't sign.
I remember.
You know?
I've asked for a selfie with a certain nameless celebrity, and she rejected me.
Oh, who? Did she?
Who was it?
I'm not saying she's.
What field?
She's an actress, and she's mega, really big.
Yeah.
And she turned me down, and I forever just feel I was embarrassed, and she left me feeling
Old age range?
Older, much older.
Right. I know who it is.
Quite a regal character.
Yes.
Is that a clue?
Might be.
Might be. OK. We are going to talk about things like a UFO tour. You fancy going on that? I would fancy that, yeah.
Waste of time.
Would you not?
Goodness sake.
Would you not?
No. I would spend my precious time hunting for things that don't exist.
Oh, well, that's what they rely on. They rely on people like you believing they don't exist there. Sean McDonald, which is a nice picture of him there. It's quite a good one. Looks well in that one. And Emily Carver, they'll be telling us more next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, let's go through the papers once again. We welcome back Emily Carver and Sean McDonald. Very nice to see them. And, we're starting with naked pictures. This is the Times, page 19.
Eddie, it's pre-Watershed. There has been a call to close the loophole in nude photos. So ministers have been urged to toughen up their plans to ban cyber flashing. So as it stands, for the online safety bill, if you send someone a naked photo unsolicited, you could be looking at up to, I think, 2 years in jail. However, men could avoid prosecution by claiming it was a prank. Now, that, to me...
That's the loophole.
That's the loophole. That makes me angry. If you say, oh, it was just a laugh or it was just a joke, there is nothing funny about sending somebody a naked picture unasked for. Imagine you walk down the street and you flashed somebody.
Yeah.
What kind of psychopath do you need to be doing this in the first place? But you think you could then get off with it by saying, oh, no, it was just a laugh. No, it's not. You're a deviant. You're a freak. You belong in jail.
Yeah.
I think we should be so unequivocal in our condemnation of this. It is ridiculous. I got one recently. I mean, I'm not this guy's target audience, so I don't know what he was thinking. And I was so angry. It was somebody quite well known as well in Scotland with a really big following.
Me.
What's that?
I'm interested to know who it was.
I've been cyber flashed by somebody quite well known as well.
Sorry, what is cyber flashing? Like
sending a picture of your genitalia.
Your appendage, unasked for. I just think, what type of lunatic do you need to be?
Well, but I think they were joking. I think it was a joke, and I think you in a grey area, because what if someone is sending you something as a joke? Then
it's not
they
funny.
Go to jail for 2 years.
Yeah, they should. It's not a joke. It's not funny. Honestly, I would be so steadfast in it. It makes me angry. Hear about it all the time, but I just think you are a psychopath and you're a pure danger to society, and you're a potential rapist and you're a potential sex offender. If you think
what is worrying?
Do you think that's normal?
Is that there's this trend of just airdropping photos. So I've had this on the train, on public transport. I'll be airdropped a photo. Now, I always reject it. I never open it. But you might just open it. Who knows what it might be?
Yeah.
So
it might be some random bloke, like opposite you.
Send you a photograph of their...
Well, I don't know what it is.
What they
do with the world.
Yeah.
It might be some random bloke who's seen you sitting across on the tube or on the train, and they might just want to send you something to scare you.
Because they don't always know who it is. Because I had it in the tube, and it basically, if you go on airdrop, and it will say there'll be maybe 20 people who have the capacity or facility to receive an airdropped photograph, and I had it in the tube, and I was like, cancel. But funny you say that, because Bumble, the dating app, they have done research, and it says it's 35% of women have received an unsolicited nude image at work. I believe it's higher, but 27% have received one in public transport. Again, I am going to be completely unequivocal in my analysis of it. You are a psychopath. You are a danger if you think this is normal, and you should be chained to a radiator in a prison. That honestly, I would.
I love how sure you are on this one. It's brilliant.
That is, honest to God, it just riles me. It riles me, and we need.
I mean, it is just a very perverted thing to do, isn't it?
To actual flashing.
Yes.
We know is a gateway to actual sexual
Absolutely,
crimes.
because, you know, the world operates digitally now. So people say, no, it's done on the phone. I don't care. Everything's done on phones. Everything's done through electronic communication. And again, for anybody watching, if you've ever done it, you're a psychopath and you belong in jail, and I would take you there myself. That is how strongly I feel.
You know, Sean, I do like Emily likes how direct you are on this, because I'm making that connection between, we covered with flies. Yes, that's one a day I get now. I get one a day, and still they come out. But you make that distinct connection, and it's only now. I mean, I've never been subjected to flashing anywhere or seen anything like that ever in my life.
Right.
But women I speak to constantly talk about their school years and on the tube, particularly on the tube in London or in parks or whatever. If I thought my daughter was being flashed at in a park, I honestly would go round with a baseball bat.
Me too.
Find whoever did it.
Eamonn, I'd be hitting home runs.
Let's have some balance here. As a child, I was never flashed.
Yeah,
although
but
there was one.
Lot have been.
There was one horrifying thing. I was probably about 12 with my friend. We'd just come back from an outdoor swimming pool. A bus driver sticks his head out and leers, wolf whistles, and sticks his tongue out.
You a kid?
A bus driver.
At children.
The absolute shame. Yeah, we were clearly children.
Dealing with a paedophile.
We were 12, 13.
I think we should just...
I was bashed.
Yeah, call it what it is. Just call it right down the middle. You shout at kids, I'm going to have to assume you're a paedophile. You saying something like that, I'm going to have to assume you're a potential rapist who's just not had the opportunity to do it yet.
Well, there you go. Ban.
Frakes.
Emily, Daily Telegraph front page. Single-sex schools will not be forced to accommodate transgender pupils. So this means what? What's the practical...
Well, this means that if you're head teacher of a girls' school, you can say, I'm not going to have a trans girl in, so I'm not going to have any biological boys. Because there was some confusion, because some schools, I think, were allowing it, some schools weren't. One of the associations for girls' schools came out and said, none of our 25 schools will be allowing biological boys into the school, even if they identify as girls. I think this is probably completely common sense, but they have to work on it. The government have to work on how it fits with the Equality Act and other legislation and things. But also, interestingly, this also says that schools won't have to use a child's preferred pronouns. So if a child comes in and they say, well, actually, you know, then usually Sam, they say, I'm actually Samantha, the school doesn't have to, you know, indulge that or affirm it.
Right, so if I want to call myself they don't have to...
They don't have to do that. But a lot of schools already are, because they're into all this stuff.
Yeah, they're already doing it.
Because let's be honest,
you can't be forced to do it.
most single-sex schools, correct me if I'm wrong, are usually private. And it seems to me, from what I've read anyway, that this is particularly big in private schools, this sort of acceptance of trans.
One school in North London, I won't name the school, but they've had walkouts of some of the kids because they're refusing to wear their school uniform because it's binary.
I almost burst out laughing at this. I didn't go to a private school, but I went to 2 single-sex schools, primary and secondary, and the idea that you would defy what the headmaster or president or whatever of the college would do would be like, it's laughable when I hear that you're being actually consulted. If you just didn't have your uniform or didn't do what you were told, you were expelled.
But it's because of this ideology, because you can, if you're a kid, you have so much power over your teacher if you say, you misgendered me. That's not my preferred pronoun. And teachers are indulging it, actually.
Well, it's very much coming from young people rather than from the teachers. And it's a grey area, I guess, for the teachers, much like we're all coming to terms that the kids are growing up with it. I'm thinking of St Paul's Girls' School, and again, I have to double-check my sources, but I'm pretty sure that St Paul's Girls' School, which comes top of the country in boys' and girls' schools in the league tables, they don't have a head girl anymore because that's considered to be in some way controversial. It's head student.
Head person. Well, someone was saying, I can't remember who, I think it might have been one of a contributor on this channel, was saying that his child, a third of his daughter's class are now non-binary or some kind of description of that, which is a bit worrying, to say the least, I'd say. It must be a very confusing time for children.
Emily, there is a story in the Times today which I'm finding it hard to understand. I'm finding it hard that death rates amongst black mothers is somehow deliberate and it's somehow racist. I mean, I'm just finding it hard to believe. As in you would have 2 mothers giving birth and you would give less care or less attention to the black one. Is it as simple as that, or am I reading this wrongly?
No, well, basically all the headlines are, of course, focusing on the racism angle because that's the most punchy. But this is a report that's looked into, yes, how women are dealt with in the NHS when they're giving birth. Apparently, black women are 3.7 times more likely to die than white women when they're giving birth. The report does not say that it's all down to racism. It does not say that. It says that that is one factor out of many. It doesn't actually seem to, the Times doesn't seem to tell us all the different factors that there could be at play. But one thing they have said that does suggest racism could be at play is that health staff sometimes perpetuate stereotypes that leads them to underestimate black women's pain. So they think that black women have a higher pain threshold or something like this. It's bizarre, but also Asian women are also more likely to die through childbirth.
Pandemic that there were race-related outcomes, and there was links to deprivation and people who have poorer backgrounds often have more health risks and more health complications, which can obviously make delivering a baby more complicated.
But it could be that.
It could be that.
It could be that, rather than the midwives turning their nose up at a black woman or treating them worse.
Yeah.
Also, midwives are of all creeds and colours, so yes.
Final word, Sean. Britain's first UFO tour to launch, says The Sun.
Yes, this is going to be in Suffolk, where I believe, I have to get this, so apparently there's a claim that there was a UFO that landed and it was seen by US Air Force personnel.
This is one of the most famous UFO cases ever.
I didn't know this, but this happened before I was born, or was this before my time?
It was in the 80s. It was, and there's documentaries and all sorts of things.
I knew nothing about this, but so there's a book written, but basically they're going to be doing these alien tours. My best knowledge of UFO sightings is in Bonnybridge. I don't know if you're aware of it. It is apparently one of the most... the area with the most reported annual sightings of UFOs, it's in Falkirk, which is quite near Glasgow. However, I recently learned, just the other day, just by chance, that, say, there was 300 sightings, but there was the one guy that reported like 295 of them.
Yeah.
So I was like, see, you lured me in,
this
you
was
had me.
witnessed. This is Britain's most serious UFO landing. It is. I don't know, you're dismissing it. It's in Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk. And 1980, we go back to 17 sightings reported. It's claimed a UFO landed and was seen by US Air Force personnel based nearby. One female supervisor is also said to have opened fire at an orange ball of light which swooped on her Jeep. Yeah.
Producer Lucy said that you would be absolutely buzzing with this, and she was right. So you're going to be going, and if you are, can I come with you?
Yes, I could go to that.
What a waste of time.
June 3rd and 4th, and tickets are limited to 25 people at 30 quid each.
If they're watching, get in touch. Me and Eamonn want to come. We want to come into
Men are obsessed with UFOs.
I don't
You
get
should
it.
be. You should be.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
Not to play into gender stereotypes, but it does seem to be the boys who like the UFOs.
In this programme is that men do get into things more, like collecting things.
Yes.
We see the danger.
A certain afternoon presenter on this channel is obsessed with UFOs.
Would that be your fiancé?
That would be my fiancé.
Well, that's 3 names for June the 2nd.
Yes. Right, we're coming.
30 quid ahead.
Lad's trip. And the director, Tom, as well.
Thank you both very much indeed. Sean McDonald there and Emily Carver with your papers on this Tuesday morning.
Now, onto a serious story. Serial sex offender Yorworth Hoare, who won the lottery whilst in prison, has been granted access to his £7 million jackpot after a 15-year legal battle.
But now the daughter of one of his victims is calling on him to donate the money he won to charity. She's Shelley Wolfson. His mum is Shirley Woodman. And Shirley Woodman joins us now. Good morning, Shirley. Thanks for your time this morning.
I'm Shelley, not Shirley.
Good. So what's your overall reaction now to what you're hearing and the fact that this man has got right now to his win?
Well, the law is the law at the end of the day, so he's entitled to it. But I'm indifferent to the whole thing. It makes no difference to me whatsoever, and it certainly doesn't make any difference to Mum because she's not here. But she would feel the same. You know, if you carry on bearing a grudge, it's like a cancer. It eats at you. So, there's just no point. But it's his millions. Why can't he spend it? He's won it fair and square according to the law. So who am I to say that he can't have it?
Right, well, I mean, a lot of people would find your dignity in all of this incredible, given the terrible suffering that your mother endured at the hands of Yorworth Hoare. But I don't know if you were watching our programme this morning. We've been talking about prisoners getting on TikTok, on social media.
Hello, good morning.
Social media stars. Lots of people will be watching this going, fair enough, you may decide not to let his crimes eat you up. But what on earth are prisoners doing on social media or indeed buying lottery tickets?
Well, the judiciary have had 20 years to sort this out. This wouldn't be coming up now if the law was that any serving prisoner should not be allowed to take part in any form of gambling. So 20 years later, I don't really see why there's such a hoo-ha, because he won it fair and square, and that's because the law of the land said so. My preference would be for her to donate at least the interest on that. 15 years interest on 7.2 million, that's a lot. So I would prefer him to donate at least some of that to charity, and I'd be happy to meet with him and discuss which charities. That's the only thing that he can do that would make things right, if you know what I mean. It's not necessarily going to take things away, but
and is that something you're trying to... Go on.
Sorry, no, carry on.
Well, I was just going to say, is that something that you're trying to arrange then? Are you trying to get access to him, to have a meeting? And if you did, and you sat down face-to-face with him and you looked him in the eyes, and I accept that you don't feel anger towards him, what would you say to him?
Let's get down to business. What can you say? My mum lived a very fruitful, full life, even after the attack, albeit, she did go through some terrible times. But there's no point me going in and sitting in judgment. He served his sentence. There's nothing I can do. And it's up to him, actually, not me. I will not be pursuing him. But if he, as a gesture, if he reaches out, then, I will go.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would say on the basis he's got his money, he's got his winnings, it doesn't change history, but he could change the future? Is there anything that you would like to say to him directly now?
Well, if you're watching and listening, let's get together. Let's do some good with the money. And you can leave a legacy just like my mum did. And it can be a positive rather than a negative legacy. So let's do it.
Well, Yorworth committed 1 rape, 3 attempted rapes, 2 indecent assaults, and he's serving a life sentence for those sex attacks when he won the lottery in 2004 and has now been granted access to £7 million. Extraordinary story. Shelley Wolfson, incredibly impressive to hear your take in all of this, and thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Food for thought, all of that.
She's absolutely right. That money has to go to charity.
Well, it's a lot of money now. It's not just he won 7 million, but the interest accrued apparently is massive. It could be 14, 15, 16 more million with that one. OK, let's have a look at the weather prospects. It's going to heat up this week, but there might be a bit of a wind about as well. Let's have a look.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Things brightening up for most places today. It's a bit drab in some spots first thing, but many of us will see some sunny spells. Warmest weather in the west with an easterly wind picking up around this big area of high pressure. That's going to bring a coolish feel to some North Sea coasts, and it feels pretty fresh this morning under the cloud, but it is tending to break up and melt away, and most of us will be dry. And generally, it will turn sunnier through the day. Some of this low cloud is likely to cling to some of the North Sea coast into the afternoon, particularly on the east coast of Scotland. And later on, the cloud may increase once more across the southeast. This easterly breeze, as I say, will bring a fresh feel to much of East Anglia, east and North Yorkshire, especially along the coast, where temperatures are going to struggle to get much above 11 or 12 Celsius. But further west, we could again get into the mid-teens, and the Highlands of Scotland could again get close to 20 Celsius with lots of sunshine here. Through this evening, I think we'll see a bit more cloud developing across the south and the possibility of a few showers coming in, particularly into southwest England later in the night. But most of us will have a dry night. Still fairly breezy. That'll help to keep the temperatures up at 6 and 7 Celsius in many places. But some rural spots with the clearest spells in the west will turn a little colder, perhaps even a pocket or two of frost through some sheltered glens across western Scotland. But again, here, plenty of sunshine to come tomorrow. Same goes for Northern Ireland. England and Wales A bit more cloud around and still the possibility of a few showers in southwest England, perhaps even into South Wales, but very hit and miss. Most places will be dry. Good spells of sunshine, and again, that contrast with east and west, with these eastern coasts pretty chilly, 10 or 11 at best. For the west, 15, 16, should feel fairly pleasant. But that brisk easterly wind will continue for a few days yet. High pressure dominating further north, but weather fronts moving in will bring an increased chance of showery rain from Thursday onwards. Goodbye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister prepares to chair Cabinet as he faces an ethics investigation into his wife's financial interests.
Good morning. 9 o'clock is the time. You're very welcome to our programme. We're with you until 9:30. It's the 18th of April. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The parliamentary ethics watchdog has launched an investigation into whether Rishi Sunak should have declared his wife's links to a company given a boost in the budget. The PM maintains he declared the interest privately and correctly.
Criminals who buy and sell machetes or zombie knives could face longer jail sentences as the government moves to crack down on the blades. Policing Minister Chris Philp told us there's no need for these weapons to be on the streets.
With constituency cases where these zombie knives with double serrated edges and in all kinds of strange shapes had been used to commit violent offences. And I couldn't see any reason at all why these need to be legal.
The government may sanction all those involved in the trial of the anti-Putin activist Vladimir Kara-Murza. The Russian-British dual national was sentenced yesterday to 25 years for criticising the war in Ukraine.
And the World Snooker Championship was disrupted last night after a Just Stop Oil protester poured orange powder onto one of the tables. The display forced a 24-hour suspension of the match between Robert Milkins and Joe Perry.
And get in touch. We'd love to hear from you throughout the course of the morning. Send in your thoughts via Twitter or email. And don't forget to mention where you're watching or listening from.
Yeah, we should say on the snooker is, Alan says, easy solution is to just stop oil and all the other protesters, fine each and every one of them, and then charge them for the clean-up as well. How has the game of snooker got anything to do with oil, says Patricia. These folk will ruin anything and everything to push their agenda. They really should be dealt with more harshly. What punishment would you enforce? GB Views at GB News.
Yeah, we were also talking about children's names after a lady named her child Avocado. Lots of you getting in touch. Someone's saying that they had a friend who was a teacher who had two children in their class called Samsung and Nokia. Yeah. And Ian's got in touch to say, my middle name is Horace. I'm 76 this year, and even now I remain embarrassed.
I'm laughing there. At Arthur, who says, why would you saddle your child with a name like Eamonn? Well, indeed, I often... I was named after a broadcaster, TV broadcaster called Eamonn Andrews. So I was.
I'm sure many have been named after you.
And then it was prophetic that I ended up in TV doing that, Arthur. I wish I had a trendy name like yours, Arthur. But there we go, stuck with it, saddled with it. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Right, our top story this morning, Rishi Sunak is chairing Cabinet as the parliamentary ethics watchdog launches an investigation into his own family's financial ties.
So he's facing accusations that he failed to disclose that his wife holds shares in a childcare agency given support in the last budget.
Well, earlier we spoke to the policing minister, Chris Philp, who told us the Prime Minister has acted appropriately.
Well, I think no one really doubts Rishi's integrity and ethics. He has declared, as he said to the committee, I think at the time, and in his subsequent letter on the 4th of April, that he has declared his wife's interests in his ministerial declaration. He did draw attention to that to the committee when he gave evidence, and he also wrote to them subsequently as well. And obviously he'll work with the Standards Commissioner to clear up any questions that are outstanding.
Well, we're joined now by the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth. Good morning to you, Mr Ashworth. You heard Chris Philp there saying there was nothing sinister going on, but you believe the Prime Minister has dodged proper scrutiny here. Why is that important?
Well, first of all, can I just say to Eamonn very quickly with that comment about Eamonn Andrews, we should bring back This Is Your Life and Eamonn should be the presenter of it. That would be fantastic. Maybe GB News could bring it back.
Start a petition.
On the point about the Prime Minister, I think... I will do. I'll get it going here and I'll put down an EDM here in the House of Commons.
There you go. A little early day motion
But on the issue of Rishi Sunak, I think the problem here is that he promised us a government of integrity and it looks like he's fallen at the first hurdle, if you like. And if he just published the ministerial interests, which he's failed to do so far, he perhaps could have avoided these issues which have come back to bite him in the last 24 hours. And they should publish those ministerial interests before the local government elections, we would say. We need some urgency there. But I think it speaks to a wider problem now with after 13 years of Conservative government, in the sense that they've run out of steam. They kind of tend to think there's one rule for them and another for the rest of us. And I'm not surprised that increasing numbers of people have had enough of them now after 13 years of government, because they've run out of steam and they don't have the answers to the questions facing the country.
Well, look, you're talking there, Jonathan Ashworth, about, this is indicative of the Conservative government and the long period of time they've been in office. And if anyone wants to know what it will be like under a Labour government, I don't know if you've had a chance to see the Sun newspaper today, but they are enlightening their readers on that. They say, take a look at how things are being run in Wales, and they're pointing specifically to this £1,600 a month that has been given to asylum seekers there to help them with legal aid and prevent deportation. Now, they've asked Whitehall to sign off on that, and that's got to be agreed. But is that what, the Labour Party would be like if they were to be running the country? Sir Keir Starmer hasn't managed to distance himself from it yet.
No, they have a particular project in Wales. It's called a Universal Basic Income pilot, but that is not the policy that we would pursue at Westminster. Look, that's fundamentally about how your social security system works. And I want to reform the way our welfare system works, our social security system works. It too often, under the Conservatives, traps people out of work. So we need reforms to something called universal credit to make work pay, to deal with the way in which it hits families particularly hard, and to help people lift themselves out of poverty and hardship and into good paying jobs. And I'm putting forward serious welfare reform policies on that front. So that is the policy that I'm pursuing as somebody who aspires to be the Work and Pension Secretary, the Social Security Secretary, if you like, who would be responsible for universal credit.
What they're doing in Wales is, traditional Labour values that you would espouse. You don't approve of that?
Well, they've got it within their, as a devolved government, they can run pilot schemes, but it's not something that we are pursuing for a Labour government at Westminster. I've said what we want to do is fundamentally reform our welfare system. We shouldn't have people trapped out of work when they want to go to work. We've just this morning had the latest unemployment figures. It shows unemployment increasing ever so slightly. It sees vacancies going down in the economy, which shows you that we've got an economy which is not firing on all cylinders. Actually, under the Conservatives now, we've gone from low growth to no growth. And increasing numbers of people are out of work for reasons of long-term sickness, the highest on record. I want to change the system so that we get people the healthcare that they need and deserve, so that they're able to live a fulfilling life. But we reform our social security system so it doesn't trap people out of work and it supports people into good, well-paying, quality jobs. They're the welfare reforms that I'm looking at and have been putting forward in recent months.
Can I just ask you quickly, before we move on, to react to some breaking news that's just come through in the last 3 minutes in relation to the ongoing situation with the Scottish National Party. We're hearing now that the Treasurer, Colin Beattie, has been arrested in connection with that ongoing investigation. We're seeing that Nicola Sturgeon's absent from Holyrood this week, and of course we know what's happened with the search of her home and the arrest of her partner, the CEO of the SNP. What are your thoughts to that breaking news?
Well, I've not heard the breaking news, but it's what we've seen is jaw-dropping, isn't it? And again, I think this shows you how the rot has set in with the SNP and their failures in the way in which they are running Scotland. And if the people of Scotland want a change of direction, which I think they actually do, I think it's pretty clear to me now that they need to come and support, and they will support, the Labour Party in Scotland as we rebuild across the country, because people are fed up of 13 years of Conservative rule and they're fed up of 13 years plus of SNP rule in Scotland.
OK. And I know you wanted to talk about ambulances today and the wait time involved in all of that. 2.5 days for some people. I had personal experience of this yesterday, an incident at a playground where a child lost consciousness. After a few moments, they came round. We called 999 and the ambulance service said they wouldn't come because the 7-year-old had regained consciousness and they had to make their own way to hospital. What sort of state is the NHS in?
I mean, the NHS is in an absolutely desperate state, isn't it? The collapse in standards of patient care, I think, are quite staggering now after 13 years of the Conservatives. It's not just that people are waiting longer for an ambulance, you're waiting longer for an operation, or your operation gets cancelled now increasingly. Or if you're a young person, 250,000 young people, children, teenagers, not getting the mental health care that they rightly deserve a need, and we all know what it's like trying to get a GP appointment. You're on the phone at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times, sometimes even more than that, trying to get through to arrange a GP appointment. We need a plan to rescue our NHS, to recruit the doctors, the nurses, the midwives, the paramedics we need. That's what the Labour Party's put forward. And we also need a reform plan to take advantage of the advances in medical technology and science to deliver healthcare in a more efficient way. And that's what the Labour Party is putting forward. But after 13 years of the Conservatives now running our NHS, and I'm afraid they've run our NHS into the ground.
OK, Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. We have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Jonathan Ashworth, MP, the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary. We've got to speak to former newspaper editor Eve Pollard on so many subjects there. Rishi Sunak. Let's start with Rishi Sunak first of all. He has declared his wife's involvement and his involvement with his wife and her involvement in this care company as a ministerial interest.
Yes, and because it's a ministerial interest and has not gone on the MP's register, they're making a tremendous fuss about it. I think the Labour Party are doing a stupid thing because they keep attacking Rishi, and it's just, the mud is not sticking, because whatever you think about politics, whatever you think about people, he seems to be a man who's getting on with the job. She doesn't run this company. She's bought shares in it. For all we know, this company is making a ginormous loss. That's got nothing to do with it. He announced it. He told the ministerial declaration. And in fact, a year ago, Keir Starmer was in the same position and hadn't announced some of his financial affairs 3 times. I mean, you can imagine these are very, very busy people. They've forgotten things. They haven't included things. They've forgotten that that might be seen as a possible financial thing. That, of course, bears no witness to normal life. Normal people don't forget things they've invested in. They don't forget what they're doing. But he did. He put it out in a ministerial declaration because it doesn't get the publicity, because it's not so easy to find. They're now having a go.
Do you not think that there is any legitimacy in that? I mean, you could argue this is someone who's come out and set the highest standards. He stood outside Downing Street saying, we're going to be professional, integrity at the heart of everything we do. And, you know, he's so rich, his defence is he's so rich, he can't keep track of his wife's investments.
Well,
I think if you're arguing for that, you have to be seen to be doing that as well.
Well, if it was proven that she made 75 quid at the end of the day, I think everybody's going to look really stupid with this. The fact that there is nothing being declared about how much profit or loss there was associated with this. And are you seriously, you're having to ask yourself a question, did the Prime Minister construct a budget whereby his wife would benefit
No, I don't think anyone's
cash?
suggesting a billionaire wants to make money out of an agency in childcare, but I think people just see it as someone who's declaring that they're going to be perfect in terms of.
Well, I'd be very, very surprised.
Well, I think
I'd be very surprised
maybe you have to now look at the way things are run and say you cannot announce things in ministerial declarations because they don't get publicity, and it can look like that. I'm sure that's not why Rishi did it. I think Rishi thought, let's put it all in a ministerial declaration, and then forgot about it. And now it's been brought up because it wasn't declared as a member's interest.
I do agree with you that the mud isn't sticking. There was an opinion poll doing the rounds yesterday that said that 12% of voters were feeling less favourable towards the Labour Party as a result of these attack ads.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's very un-British. It's very not our way.
You spent time living in the US.
Yes.
You saw this type of political polstering and attack dog stuff, and it seems to work there.
But it's a different country. They have different views. Yeah. Money is front, centre, sideways of their life. Money, of course, is terribly important in this country, particularly people who don't have enough of it, and I understand that. But we're not the same. And also, frankly, everybody in politics in America has to be rich, because you have to be able to afford to run for office. It's done in a completely different way. Speak the same language, we're not the same people.
Indeed.
So it's a handicap, you think, running for office in this country if you're from a wealthy background?
It's a handicap running for office in this country if you're from any background. If one of my children came to me and said, I want to be an MP, I'd spend days, I'd try and force them, you know. It's very hard to win here. And there's a nasty antagonism at the moment, particularly coming from Labour. They are so frustrated. They will be so angry if they don't really win the next election.
Okay,
that they're having a go.
Let's bring in Beverly Turner and Andrew Pearce on this one. 9:30, they'll be to the point. Will this feature with you guys today? And do you think Sunak is in a dodgy position with all of this?
Look, it's a mix-up. That's what it is. And he takes advice from officials, so he put it in his ministerial declarations, and he should have put it in the MPs one, but he didn't take an advice on that. It's a small technical breach, and he alludes to Keir Starmer last year. He was actually rebuked by the Standards Commissioner for 8 late declarations of money he'd earned externally. So they're not really in the right position. It really is it's not a storm in a teacup. It's a storm in a very small egg cup.
OK, fair enough. What else have you got coming up?
We're going to be talking to John Cordwell, of course, mobile phone entrepreneur and a self-made man from the age of 18. I want to talk to him about the latest employment figures. We're going to talk about these emergency phone alerts which are coming. And actually listening to your interview there with Jonathan Ashworth about the universal basic income in Wales. When you hear the phrase universal basic income, you can't believe that we're having this in 2023. So we're interested to find out from him what he thinks about that whole generation of young people, actually.
And we're also going to talk about snooker, not my sport, don't think it's best sport, but how dare they disrupt it, those wretched Just Stop Oil people? What was the point?
You see, I think it could have been much more dangerous and threatening. And I just know, if I was sitting in that auditorium, which is quite intimate, and this orange powder, what the heck is that? What are you breathing in?
I know, really.
And I just think these people are tolerated, and they'll do it again every time they're tolerated.
All those people who paid good money to go and see that, sit in that arena, they've lost their money. They are selfish and stupid, and I hope they get banged up.
Yeah, and we had the Grand National protesters, we had the snooker protesters. There's a real rise at the moment, isn't there, of some people who think that they can impose their views on other people regardless of disruption.
Well, listen, as your programme name suggests, just straight to the point.
We
look forward to it at 9:30. Thank you.
Thank you. At the time, it's 17 minutes. We will come back with Eve Pollard, and she'll be sharing her thoughts on the government's clampdown on machetes. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
There's a big talking point today about machetes and things called zombie machetes and zombie knives and all sorts of things. And the zombies that actually have them and use them. Eve Pollard is with us now to give her opinion on this. So they could be banned in England and Wales. My only question is, why aren't they banned already?
Well, nobody thought, I suppose, that you had to ban machetes. You can buy them for £16. It's not a lot of money. And, of course, you can do real damage with machetes.
Real damage.
I mean, if you have a knife, you can cause a lot of blood to be spilled and everything, but you can't damage somebody. With a machete, it'll go to the bone and it will really harm somebody. And it's more violent. I mean, it's something the police will have to deal with. It's something we're seeing on TV screens. There are films now with people who have machetes as weapons.
This is why they're called zombie knives.
Yes.
Because this is sort of the whole
The zombie knives have the blade on both edges.
And these blades come with both edges.
You were making the comparisons with America earlier, and we often look at the gun epidemic they have there with bewilderment, but actually the knife problem we have here is our equivalent. Of course. Most of the murders and deaths, particularly in gang culture, is perpetrated with knives. And you think we just got to get a grip of this. How can you order one for £16 and have it arrive the next day?
And, of course, it comes as if you're going to the jungle, which, of course, nobody is in this country. They're violent and they should be stopped. I think it's a good idea and they should just get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing to...
Now, let's talk about this protest at the World Snooker last night, and they've got the publicity that they want. Just stop oil. I'm sympathetic to the message, just stop oil. Don't totally believe in it, but I'm sympathetic to it. But I see what went on last night, and it turns me off.
Well, first of all, of course, we're all sympathetic. We're all sympathetic to climate change. This country has actually done rather well on climate change and is continuing to do well in climate change. We only produce, of course, a very, very small amount of carbon trouble in the area. But you have a situation where I think these guys, a lot of them want publicity. Why do they go to snooker? Snooker's got nothing to do with oil at all. They knew they'd be photographed. They knew they'd cause a riot. And, of course, the thing didn't work with the Grand National. And so they're now going to look, and this is the dangerous thing, for easier and easier places to put their message out. And I do think if they had a job, they'd be worried about somebody, their boss, seeing them and saying, he's supposed to be in graphics or he's supposed to be in that department. What's he doing? Spreading powder, and who knows what powder, in the middle of a small, constrained area where people are going to breathe that in. For what reason? I just think it's like the whole world wants to be a celebrity.
Can I ask you, though, as a newspaper editor, and we've been talking about Maggie Thatcher's oxygen of publicity, would you have put those pictures on the front of your paper? Because some people are saying we shouldn't be, glorifying...
Giving them the oxygen.
The trouble is we always worry about the oxygen of, publicity. I think it's right. Look at that guy. He does not look like a happy guy. I would want to give him chicken soup and discuss his problems with him. I mean, I'm not saying he's wrong about wanting us to worry about the planet. It's the most important job, in a way, we have for our children and our grandchildren. But this is not going to help.
Eve, you've just come up with a brilliant segment for GB News. We'll get you, we'll get him, we'll get some chicken soup and you can discuss his problems. That'll be TV.
I'd love to talk to him. I'd love also to find out the background of these people, because I think A lot of them are quite well off. I think a couple of nights in jail might be a shock.
With their hands glued. Let them glue their hands. Glue them to the wall.
Eamonn, I'm not sure I'm going that far.
There are people that go further than that and taser them and goodness knows what. I mean, there are people who went to the Crucible last night and it was a lifetime's ambition.
Sure.
And they were at the World Snooker Championship and they mightn't get back again to it. Their night was spoilt last night.
You know, Michael Caine once told me he came back to live in Britain because he liked watching snooker. If you think about the millions of people who played snooker pool at some stage, colour television made it possible. A lot of old age pensioners would have been enjoying that, and it was destroyed for them.
I was enjoying it. I'm not an old age pensioner.
No, but you will be. You will be, as I
am. Not far away. Eve Pollard, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
And it's always a pleasure having your company at home. Thank you for watching, tuning in,
vital.
however it is.
Go and tell your friends.
And do the same again from 6 o'clock tomorrow, but don't turn off your box, because up next it's Bev and Andrew with To The Point.
Good morning.
How are you?
It's to the point. Andrew and Bev.
It really is. Right, we've got a busy show this morning. That breaking news about the S&P treasurer.
Been arrested. That's just 2 weeks after the chief executive was arrested. Big story.
Yeah.
Also, we're talking...
Let's lay into the Just Stop Oil protesters ruining the snooker.
How dare they? You pay all that money to watch a snooker and there's car... all over the... What was the point of it?
I know. And also, apparently it's not coronation chicken. We're going to be eating coronation quiche.
Okay, right, one of the
all
king.
about that. See you in a bit.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the